Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you might be. Happy time zone. Good morning, Christos. How are you, my friend?
Happy time zone, man. Happy time zone. I mean, it's crazy, right? Have to think in three different time zones, but I am good. It's Monday. Super excited to be here again
Yeah,
with you.
yeah,
And apparently we have some developments in the Thrazman phase, but it's nice.
yeah.
Back on Monday, the weather is crappy out there, so I'm looking forward to writing some code and doing stuff.
That's at least one thing I have in my favor today is the weather where I live
Mm-hmm.
is 59, sunny. Although it's supposed to be 80 degrees this week, which I'm kind of like not really looking forward to, but you know.
No, looking forward. I can imagine. Yeah, 80 degrees. But 80 degrees is nice because did I tell you that I was trying to hold off from wearing trousers, like long trousers. I was keeping the shorts on, and I said, you know what? This time maybe I can set a record where I go from early May all the way to October without even putting pants on. So it will be shorts day and night.
Yeah.
But last week the temperature dropped quite a bit, and because we're sitting in the office quite a lot and you don't move around, your body temperature falls, and then if there's no heating, then you get cold. So I had to put my sweatpants on,
Oh, nice.
unfortunately. So I didn't manage to keep my record to the end of the year of the October. However, we still haven't turned the heating on. We use the fireplace, so I think that's a little bit of a cheat. So we have a gas fireplace in the living room. So in the morning we just turn it on for a little bit to break the cold because the girls come down for breakfast.
Yeah.
But still no central heating on. So I think we're doing good. 10 more days to hold on, and then yes, record. Definitely not 80 degrees though. I think this week we're going to be between 40 degrees and 60. So it's very average in Seattle. But then again, it's the fall,
Yeah.
so it's expected.
Yeah, I mean, my power bill was chopped in half because I'm not running the air conditioners all the time like we were before. I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we've got three small units, like one for each floor. I can't imagine what it would be. I can't imagine what it would be if we had one. Oh my god, it'd be awful. But
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely nice here. At least it's the one advantage we have right now is But although the kids are off today, kids don't have school today. They didn't have school Friday, so we may have some unexpected thumps and visitors today. But
Same
whatever,
here.
that's
No
okay.
school today. It's teacher training or something, and that means that they're gonna be stuck around the house
Yep.
with no stuff to do. So I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yep. My daughter is like super, super into Halloween. She's like over the moon about Halloween. I've never met anybody so excited about it. And so every like 20 minutes she goes out front to primp and preen the inflatable pumpkin that's out there in the front yard.
Right?
So, yeah, in fact, this morning she's already been in here twice to say, Daddy, oh my God, the pumpkin's falling over. What are we going to do? It's like, Madeline, it's okay, baby. It'll be all right. So, but anyway, okay, so did you have a good weekend?
It was good.
Yeah.
I got a new monitor, which I'm super excited about.
Is it working?
Unfortunately, my Surface Dock doesn't like it.
Oh, no.
So it was working fine, okay, yesterday.
Yeah.
This morning, not so much. I think I need to restart on my machine because I've got some Windows updates as well. Maybe that will fix it, but I've tried everything in the book, the switch on, switch off, disconnect the cables. Although I'm using the DP cable, not the HDMI, and I suspect that this could be the reason why.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it has two HDMIs and one DP cable. I use the DP because I had that before,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work. So I might have to change and test my HDMI cables to see if that works. If not, I'm scratching my head because I have no idea what's happening here. I think it's the dock and the monitor just not happy with each other.
Yeah.
But this won't last long because I'm getting my desktop soon. By soon, I mean when Dell decides to ship it because it's Dell. So I'm thinking the dock will be gone and I won't need it anymore. So I have to connect directly to the desktop.
Yeah.
Will be an experience. Man, I haven't had a desktop in 14 years.
Wow.
It's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine not working on one on a desktop every
Well,
day.
if you always travel and go to customers, there's no point you can drag your desktop with you. And I have been mobile for the best part of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Working as a consultant and then working at Microsoft as a PFE. So it was always a customer side, always traveling, and a good laptop really helps. But now that I'm at home, I definitely can use a better machine.
It's the power of the
It's
cloud,
not,
man. You gotta sync everything, and then that way you don't have to worry. That's what I do. Everything's synced. Anyway.
well, everything is on the OneDrive, so I don't have anything local. I can wipe out my machine anytime and not lose anything.
Yeah.
But recently, I've been using VMs to do my development work, and it's not as efficient.
Yeah.
So,
well, my weekend was long, but last night, for some unknown reason, I don't know what. I think I was thinking about today and what we were going to work on today, but I started thinking about our project, and
right?
There have been two.
Oh yeah, you do that. You think about our project on the weekends. I mean, I'm impressed.
So there are two questions we get all the time.
Okay.
Why aren't you using durable functions? And the other one is, why aren't you using durable functions? So last night.
Yeah, why are you using?
So my original intention was that it's all fire and forget. Maybe we don't really need them, right?
Sure.
We had a great talk last week from one of our friends.
Sahil.
Not from Sahil. I can't remember his name now. We had a great talk about durable entities and durable functions last week.
Oh yeah, it was Simon Crouch.
Simon, that's right. And it got me thinking. Yeah. It got me wondering. And so I thought, if nothing else, let's at least build this in a way that lets us switch between durable functions and not durable functions, and we'll see which one we like better. See which one wins, right?
Oh, you went down that route.
But then it also got me thinking of, well, so we were talking about making this multi-tenant, where we can manage resources for anybody.
Correct.
And the multi-tenant aspect of it is neat, because then it's just a matter of, hey, come and sign in, and if you sign into the app, we'll pick up everything that we need, and as long as your account has the right permissions, we can go and manipulate your Azure resources.
Yep.
But I also, of course, having worked with customers for so long, realize that a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people are not going to give some third party, especially some third party, the suspect is the two of us, access to their subscriptions. So I thought, well, it'd be really nice for people to be able to run this on their own and not have to run a SaaS to run it on their own. In addition, it might be neat for people to run this locally. They might want to run it on a function running on a Raspberry Pi or on a VM running somewhere. Like, they may not be able to use functions specifically, as in they may not be able to use functions directly in sort of the SaaS way. So I ended up blowing up a bunch of the code. Not really blowing it up, but just moving a bunch of stuff around, right, to make it easier for us to do a few different things.
Yep.
And then I started looking more at Resource Graph. We talked about Resource Graph last week, right? It's a really quick and easy way to find stuff. So the query that we got up on the screen right now. So there are kind of three queries, right? So we've got this one.
Yep.
And Resource Graph lets us query all of the resources that are available at whatever sort of scope you have permissions to. And of course, you can filter.
Should we explain a little bit what Thrazman is? Because we might have new people joining the channel today, and they might not know what we're doing what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's true. So Thrazman, good morning, Bolt, by the way. Good to see you again. Thrazman is sort of a mechanism for us to automatically expire Azure resources, right? So I used to travel and see customers a lot, and inevitably I would get off the plane and I'd get home and I'd think in the back of my mind, did I delete that VM? Did I shut that VM down? Did I delete that app service? Or, in some cases, did I delete that giant, Databricks cluster that we'd created? And of course, you find out very quickly whether or not you did, because then you get an email from the people that paid the bills saying, hey, your bill is way too high this month, and if you do this again, then, they never tell.
Yeah, we may be getting free resources for Azure since we work for Microsoft, but we're still accountable for what we're running and how we're running it.
Yeah, somebody still pays for it. I mean, somebody's still got to pay for it.
Yes, exactly.
So you get the email that tells you that you spent too much money, and it's somewhat it's never exact in what the penalty is, but you know that it's not good. So 18 months ago, we built a thanks, Bolt. Yeah, I'm super tired, man. I stayed up too late working on this, and now I'm super sleepy because we had to get up early. But so about 18 months ago, I started working on something called Azman, A-Z-M-A-N, for Azure Manager. And it would handle really two main things. It would tag resources when they were created. So if I created a new resource group, we'd put a tag on that resource group with a bunch of different metadata. And one of the pieces of metadata was an expiration date. And so at that expiration date, the other thing that Thazman would do would be to delete the resource group, right? So the resource group would just get purged into the ether. And it worked really well. It was very bare bones, but it worked really well. Like, I never had an issue with forgetting resources anymore. And of course, you could just go, if I wanted to delete something sooner, I could just go change a tag, and changing tags and stuff in the mobile app's easy and things like that. So I could just go change the expiration date tag to yesterday, and then that resource would get deleted. And that worked really well. There were two primary problems with it. One, there was no confirmation. So, you know, if I didn't stay on top of when my resources were about to be deleted, then they'd get deleted, and I wouldn't know about it. I would.
And remind us what happened one Christmas day when you woke up and...
Yeah, so I had a habit of pushing everything that I didn't want, things that I knew I needed for a long time. I said, you know what, let me put the expiration date to 2019-12/31, thinking that way I'll make it through the rest of the calendar year, and at the end of the calendar year, I'll reassess what the new expiration date should be for these resources. Because I figured if I put a date that was like super, super, super far out in the future, that wouldn't be good, right? So instead, I set it to the end of the year, thinking, well, I'll be off. It'll be a great time to go and, you know, handle some hygiene and maintenance. Well, I was off work. I was very off work because it was Christmas and, you know, whatever, and New Year's, and I forgot about it. So it was a day or two after New Year's, and I came back in, and everything was gone except for the storage account that ran the original Thazman. That was the last thing that it couldn't delete before it deleted itself. So it ate itself. I had no way to get back to any of the stuff that I had, which was, you know, the thing is, this happened 10 months ago, and I haven't really missed anything, so nothing out there really must have been that important. And of course, most of the code still exists in a repo or something somewhere. And the data still exists in backups that are somewhere, in some cases anyway. And so
your automation work. I mean, it's great to be able to automate resources, but we wanted to take it one step further. So first of all, we started rewriting the whole thing from scratch because we wanted to think about how can we make it better, since or hence today's discussion about rewriting everything again, just to use a better architecture. And then the other one is we also wanted to introduce things like Alexa and Google Assistant control. So you can go, hey, Google, what is being deleted? Or, hey, Google, go and wipe out my resource groups or whatever. So you don't have to actually physically spin up your application on your desktop or whatever. You don't have to log in. It does it for you via voice. And you can also interrogate, right? Say, hey, Alexa, what's coming up for deletion or whatever.
Yeah, so there were two.
That's what you want.
Yeah, there were two big things I wanted out of the new one, which was A, notifications, right? To say, hey, these resources are going to be deleted in a few days. Or even these resources are going to be deleted. Do you want to cancel that, or do you want to extend their lifetime for an extra month, or whatever? So sort of the notification side of getting a text or an email or carrier pigeon, whatever, just something to say, hey, these resources are on the chopping block. So if you still need them, just kind of as a reminder, because 30 days is a surprisingly long time, especially in 2020 when it's now March 479. So. But the other side to that was, in the event of an inadvertent deletion, I wanted to make sure that we could somewhat recover from it. So the other thing I wanted to do is persist the resource group templates. So, of course, you can generate a resource group template, which has all the resources that are in a resource group. So in Azure, if we have a resource group and it's got a SQL database and a web app and maybe 10 other things in it, a storage account, whatever, you can deploy those from a template, or you can deploy them in the portal, or you can pull a template out, right? So the template itself is generated, and it's not super, super useful immediately, but the template itself is just a representation of all the configuration of the resources. And one of the big things that we see now that we've changed is there's a whole lot of configuration that goes into deploying a cloud app. Like the code itself, yeah, you've written the code and the code's sitting in a repo somewhere. That's pretty standard practice now. But the configuration ends up being more than half of the work that you have to do in some cases, right? Where you've got to configure.
Yes, that's correct.
You've got to configure Key Vault, and you've got to configure your app settings on your functions and which regions they're going to be in. You might go deploy a traffic manager or some other kind of resource in front of it, or Azure Front Door, whatever. So you end up with this massive chunk of configuration, and if you didn't write an ARM template in the beginning, which I guess you should be doing, but if you didn't, if you were just doing dev and test and you were deploying from the portal or through CLI, you may not have a template. So we wanted to persist a template too, so that you can get back to at least the configuration you had before, in addition to redeploying your code from whatever repository it might be in.
Yeah.
So that was the other big thing was, okay, how do we recover if we inadvertently delete something? And so that's about where we are, right? That's what we're building, is a system to tag your resources, delete your resources, and then persist some metadata about them so you can redeploy them later, right? So we've been working on this for what? We've been working on this on and off for about 3 or 4 weeks now. Yeah. So let's go dive into the code. We're gonna zoom in here a little bit.
Do you wanna put a OneNote up the top so maybe people can actually follow along on where we are and what we're doing, like a checklist?
Yeah, let's put I'll put a sticky note over here on the side.
Sticky note. There you go.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of sticky notes.
A virtual sticky note. Yeah, I use them as well. Just don't put secrets there, people, please.
Although I probably can't zoom into the text on it, so maybe it won't work.
Well, you can always try.
We'll just do Notepad. I just tried; it doesn't work.
There you go.
We've already got OneNote. We've already got OneNote. Let's just use OneNote. So this is our original sort of OneNote document of all the different things we wanted to do. Originally, this was titled, things I don't like about the Azure portal, but then my friend said, well, that sounds more like a you problem than a me problem. So this has sort of all of the pieces that we think we're going to need to do. So the first one is when a new resource group gets created, we need to be notified of that. We need to do something with it. So we're going to use Azure Monitor for that. And we've already configured that. So that's an Azure Monitor. It's called an action group. And the action group contains a set of actions. So in our case, it's calling a function. It could be calling a webhook of your own making anywhere on the internet. So it could be in your service system on-prem. It could be in another cloud. Doesn't really matter. You could also put things into queues. You can send emails, that sort of thing. For us, all we're doing is notifying an Azure function, which is essentially a webhook. So we're going to make an HTTP call from Azure Monitor, which is all done via configuration. And Azure Monitor has our function has an HTTP trigger, and that's the thing that starts reading the alert to figure out what's going on. We'll go look at that one now. So let me get this out of the way here. We'll go ahead and pull this one over here a little bit. So let's get to...
Thank you. May need to zoom a tad more, like one click.
Okay, so let's get to our... This is our HTTP request. So this is our HTTP function, this one here.
Nice.
It's called run, creatively enough, but it's actually called on resource group create. So when that webhook comes in, we go and we look at the body, and we process some data that's in the body. You'll notice this looks a little bit different from last week, but we'll get back around to that. But it's essentially, it's a known schema, so you know what you're going to get, and there's just a bunch of data in it. A bunch of data like, what was the resource that was changed, what happened, who did it, what was the old value, what was the new value, etc. 10 things I hate about you. Yeah, that might as well be the name of every single one of my projects, because every time I open up old code, I mean, I wrote this code last night, and I'm already repulsed by it. So our HTTP...
It's only 4 lines of code. What's wrong with it?
Well, it's only 4 lines because we've moved a bunch of it somewhere else. So our HTTP function receives in a request from Azure Monitor. It says, hey, something's happened. We've got a new resource group that's been created. And if we look at this code here, I'll uncomment this just to make it easier to read for the moment. We're checking the activity log node in the payload that we get, and we're looking for two statuses. One status is succeeded and one status is created. There are also statuses and substatuses. So we may be in a case where the deployment has been created, meaning we've submitted the job to Azure AD or to Azure to go and process creating whatever, a new resource group or something different. We've submitted that work, but it's not finished yet. So we might be in a case where it may not be finished, and that's what we're doing here. Is we're checking to see these statuses to see what they are, and if it's
by
not
finished you mean fully deployed, right?
Correct. If it's not both succeeded and created as a status and a substatus, then we're saying okay, it's deploying. It is not deployed yet, right? Yes. It's not in the past. It's actively happening right now. And in the case that has succeeded, then we take 4 units of data and we shove them into a queue. We get the resource group name, the caller, so this is the user who initiated that resource group being created, the subscription ID that it happened in, and the event timestamp. So we get those 4 pieces of data, and we shove them into a queue. Now, the cool thing about functions is we have these function bindings, and the bindings are what handle this outbound queue. So this outbound queue parameter, or outbound queue object, that's handled by Azure Functions. So we don't have to write any plumbing to go and talk to the queue directly. We just exit, or we add to this, we do this add async on the outbound queue collector, and that, our model, which is just a plain C# object, nothing exciting here, just a little data object, carries these 4 things, serializes it, and pushes it into the queue, right?
And I think our queue is a service bus, if I remember correctly, right? We haven't
storage.
Used... we use storage queues?
Yep. We're using storage queues because storage queues are super fast, super cheap, and for what we're doing, we don't need the messaging semantics that go into service bus. We don't need pub sub, at least not yet. I don't think we're going to use it right now. We don't need pub sub. We don't really need specific hard delivery guarantees, and don't really need the messaging overload or overhead that service bus adds.
Yes.
And
it's a bit heavy-handed for what we're doing here.
Yep, and they're super cheap. So for inter-process communication, for 2 functions talking to each other, they're super cheap, they're super easy to use. And because we have these function bindings, we really don't have to do a whole lot of work, right? The only thing we're really doing is this add async with a specific object, and then away we go, right?
Sweet.
Now, earlier last week, we were doing this all in a single function, which was fine. However, this is commented out because you'll notice we have this thing now called the tagger. This is a new object that got created last night, in fact. And the tagging server, or the tagging thing itself, this process alert, it's basically just the meat of the previous method, just moved a little bit, right? And we'll get into why we're going to make that change here in just a minute. But so we have this new service, the tag request service, I think it's called, or resource tag service. And this service is what's going to parse this request. So this is doing exactly what we were doing before. It's parsing the request, and then instead of doing something with the data, it's just going to return the data in its new format, right? So in this tagging request model. And if we get back to if we get back down here, you'll notice that let's assess the output. If our tag request has a value, so it's not null, then we're going to put it into the outbound queue. So the plumbing for both the HTTP input and the plumbing for the queue is handled by the Azure function. So that's
very nice.
Our HTTP trigger here. This is what's handling the incoming HTTP call. And then we have the queue parameter, the queue method parameter here. And this one is what handles sending data to the queue when we want to push a message into the queue, right? Now, because we're using HTTP here, HTTP requires a response.
We have a question which we haven't set up yet. In question is asking for your Visual Studio Code theme, I think. Do you care to share?
Sure. It's Synthwave 84. And if you want the glow around your text, you have to modify VS Code checksums, which is always file checksums, which is always fun. because apparently that theme modifies some of the underlying files. So VS Code will ask, well, say, oh, sorry, your installation's corrupted. So
there you go.
Anyway, so when we're doing an HTTP trigger, you'll notice there's this return new OK object result, right? Mm-hmm. We always have to return an HTTP response because otherwise, we make an HTTP call and our caller is waiting for a response, a 200 OK, a 404 not found, a 401 unauthorized, whatever. But our caller is expecting that. And if they don't get it, a lot of times they'll hang open for 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds, however long their timeout is, waiting for that response to come back.
Yep.
So we always have to return some kind of HTTP response when we're using an HTTP trigger. Let me delete this to make this a little bit easier to read.
Yeah, I was going to say, please wipe out all the wall of comments.
Yep.
Since we cleaned it up now.
So we have to, because we're getting an HTTP request in, we have to respond to that request, or else the callers are going to sit there and hang open forever, waiting for us to respond. And 30.
Yeah, and for people that have not really used functions before, it's a serverless solution by Microsoft. So it allows you to run a piece of code serverless on the cloud without you having to set up infrastructure. So this is why what we're doing here, and the reason why we're doing it is because we don't have to spin up a VM, we don't have to spin up a web app or a web job. Think of them as the V2 of web jobs, where we have a lot more control and a lot more bindings, and allows us to do things like this, right? A little bit of code that executes based on the trigger and has a certain output or outputs. In this case, we have two outputs and one input. The input is the HTTP request or the trigger that comes from the onCreate resource. We respond to that event, and then the response out is writing something in the queue.
Yep. So because we always have to respond to an HTTP request, we always have to send something back. That's why we're using for the queue binding here. You'll notice it says async collector, and the async collector is what allows us to essentially have multiple outputs, because we can't return two things from our method, right? From our function. And so because we can't return twice, we need a different way to send that queue data out. And the async collector is how we do that. So this collector is added as an input method, or as an input parameter to our function, and we give it a name. And then when we want to use it, we just add a value to it. Right. There's also, I believe, there's a flush async too. So if you need more control to say explicitly, please go and push this into the queue right now, that's where flush comes to make that a little bit easier. Typically, though, you don't need that, and typically I don't use it very much, because when this method exits, all of our messages will be written to the queue. So as soon as we've returned, all of our outbound messages are going to be flushed out into the queue. Right.
Right.
So this is our new on-resource group create method, and it's fairly straightforward. We get the body out of the alert, we go and process it, so we transform it and do a little bit of work to get a new data type out of it, and then we let the function handle the queue. Now, part of the reason for doing this is that, let's say you want to run this in a console app, right? You could, because all you really need to do is reference the tagging, sort of the underlying tagger that's going and handling the alert, and then you handle creating an HTTP server around it, and you handle the plumbing to connect to a queue of your choice, right? But the core logic here that processes one of those Azure Monitor alerts doesn't really change regardless. And so because we had so many questions about, should we use durable, should we use this, should we use that, I thought, let's build our code in a method that lets us be more flexible with the kind of hosts we want to use. Right?
Yep.
So here's our sort of starting point, is this on resource group create, right? So this is the thing that happens. It's fairly straightforward. Data in, modify data back out, tell the caller it was all good. Let's get out of here and let's skedaddle, right?
Yes.
So the next thing we have to do then is go and tag the resources. So once we've received a request, and once we've put this data into the queue, this function called tag resource group is what actually goes to run. And this is triggered by the queue. So the fact that we're putting data into the queue from our HTTP trigger, that queue data is then being read by the next function in line, which is this one, right?
Yep.
And so because of this queue trigger, this function will get that data without us calling it directly. So the function's runtime and the function's bindings are what handle polling the queue, looking for new messages, peeking them, and then completing them when you're finished. So all we need to do is give it some configuration, which is just the name of the queue and which connection we're going to use. And then you'll also notice that the type of this incoming parameter is the actual type that we put into the queue. So the binding will handle both serializing it when you're putting messages into the queue and also deserializing it when you're pulling messages back out of the queue. So instead of writing all the deserialization code to go and read a JSON document or parse some JSON and then deserialize it into something else, instead we don't have to do any of that. The function's runtime handles it for us. Very nice. There are pros and cons there, of course. If you don't have control over the caller, for example, it may get a little dicey if you need more manipulation of what the messaging in and out might look like. And of course, you're free to do that on your own too. But for what we're doing, since we're controlling both ends, we're putting messages into the queue and we're taking messages out. Since we're doing that with our code, there's no reason right now that we need that kind of low-level JSON string manipulation where we would have to serialize or deserialize in a special manner for what we want to do.
We go the least friction way, right? Yep. It does it for us. We don't have to do anything super complicated. So for what we're doing, it works perfectly well.
Yep. So at this point, we now have our event-driven tagging set up, right? So between these two functions, tag resource group and on resource group create, and this should really be on resource group created with a D. Between these two functions, we now know when a new resource has been created, in my case, a new resource group, because that's what we care about, and we know what to do with it, and we have a method to go and actually tag it when we're done, once we've gotten it. So let's go look at our tag resource here. Tag resource, let's see. Here we go.
Now, I'm surprised you haven't moved all that to a separate class project, which means that it will become a lot more testable.
Yeah, I will.
Stack it all in one class.
I will. I just hadn't done it yet. We will.
Oh, we're just messing with JP's architecture there.
Just not there yet. So when we need to actually go tag our resources, this is what the tagger's doing. So we're using the resource management client. And the resource management client is part of the Azure SDK. So this is this is for manipulating resources and for managing resources. And we're going to hit an interesting snag today, which we're going to have to discuss, which is this default Azure credential, right? So we're using a default Azure credential here. And default Azure credential is baked into Azure SDK to give us a way to authenticate to Azure, essentially to get an access token to talk to Azure in a myriad of different ways. Because it all depends on where you're running, and there's a whole sort of workflow that default Azure credential goes through. So if you're using your local dev like we are, then local dev is going to try to use CLI, or if you're in Visual Studio, there's some Visual Studio plumbing to make that work. All sorts of different things happen.
Same for VS Code, by the way, since now you can log into your VS Code, then you emit credentials. Those credentials, as long as they have permissions to speak to Azure resources, it allows the Azure SDK, the Azure Identity Library, to pick up the information from the local machine. So they will try to scan for these things. They will test the CLI. If you've logged in, it will use that. If you haven't logged in, it will try to fall back into, as JP said, a myriad of other options in hope that it will find something. If it doesn't find anything, it will prompt you for a login. But the nice thing is that once you move to a production environment like Azure, you don't have to change your code a bit because it will use things like managed identities or other stuff that you have set up. So the default Azure credential is a very nice way, a very easy way to allow you to create portable code and secure code between your dev, QA, and prod environments.
Yeah, so once we get our resource management client, we go and find the resource group that we were specifically looking for.
Right.
which is the one that came in on the request. So that would be the new one that just got created. And right now we're doing 30 days. So 30 days. So now plus 30 days is what we're doing for our default expiration time, and we add that with an expires tag.
Very nice.
We've got a tagged by, so we know that Thrazman tagged it, which will come in handy later. And then we've got our...
Did we not say that we're going to change the default days to be parameterized so we can actually change the duration?
Yeah, we are. It all needs to move to config. Okay. So, sure. And then we have the owner. So we also tag who created it. So who is the user who put in the request to create this resource group? Because now that person's the owner, and that person will now be responsible to say, do I need this or not anymore, right? There's a funny story about a place I used to work. When I was doing consulting, I worked at a place for a while, and they had a massive Hyper-V farm. And the reason their Hyper-V farm was so massive was because nobody knew who owned anything. And so they just kept on adding capacity to handle all the VMs that all their developers were creating.
God, so they were using it for development, but they didn't know who owned the server farm or the VM farm, and
yeah, they had
therefore they would not touch it.
Yeah, they had a 4-month SLA on getting a VM created after it went through all the teams that needed to create one, but nobody in those 4 months decided to write down who owned it, and so then they would say, well, we need to delete this. Well, whose is it? Well, we don't know.
Excuse me, did you say 4-month SLA for a cloud resource?
Yeah, it took 4 months. Oh, no, this was Hyper-V on-prem, so it took them...
Oh, sorry, Hyper-V on... Oh, that... Sorry.
Yeah, it took 4 months.
Okay.
4 months. So...
4 months.
Anyway, so we go and get some tags, all right? So these are arbitrary tags that I find interesting. The only one that we actually need is expires. The rest of them are just for my own information, and so we can see what they are in the portal quickly or whatever.
Well, it's always nice to see like additional information, and since tags are free, you don't have to pay for them. Make good use of them by adding information that makes sense.
Yep. So, in my opinion, things that are interesting to me are the owner, who created it, and then how this was tagged. Right. And how this is tagged is really mostly for our own purposes later, so that when we're searching for these, we know we find things that have already been tagged by one of our own systems instead of somebody manually adding a tag later on.
Well, tags can also be used for environments, right? So if you're doing costing per environment or per tag, that allows you to have a breakdown. So you can have a tag for dev and QA and can see what resources are used where.
Yep.
So lots of different ways.
Yeah, so
benefit.
The way that I did it historically, and this is sort of, now we're getting into sort of the purely optional part, but I would name my resource groups in a specific manner. So we have these dashes, for example. So I would name them, service, so what kind of function was this doing? Which customer or which, who is this for, what environment it was in, and then everything else was just whatever. And that's all we're doing here, right?
Yep.
So we're just splitting out a string name that looks like this, and then adding new specific tags. So what's the function, like what is the function of this thing that we've deployed?
Yes.
What customer is it for? What environment is it in? And then is there a specific project or whatever, which is really just the rest of it. Then we do a create or update async. And now, because we're using this resource manager client, all that's sort of handled for us. We don't have to deal with the specifics of making the API calls. That's all done by the resource manager client.
Yeah, and that's part of the new Azure SDKs, by the way.
Yep.
Just so you're aware, in case you're asking where we found them. I'll put the link in the chat so you can have a look as well.
Yep. So we've got so at this point, we can tag a resource, we can process an alert, right? We've got this resource tag service that handles all of that. We have an interface so that we can inject it in here later on. And that's sort of the point, right, is that this will sort of be its own class library at some point, and then you just import it and pull it into whatever you need. You pull it into a console app, you can pull it into AWS Lambda, you can pull it into a .NET app running on a container. It doesn't really matter. A function running in Kubernetes on a Pi cluster at your house. Doesn't really matter. What kind of host you use, what matters is that we're really just trying to isolate the logic of what we need to actually have happen, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we have functions that makes things like plumbing to a queue really easy and receiving an HTTP request really easy, because we have those in our host of choice, which right now is Azure Functions, it makes it really easy. And so this code ends up being very little, like go and tag the resource. But your own code would have to handle that plumbing for you, and so it's nice to have flexibility. And since we're going to look at using durable functions in the future, this kind of flexibility will make that part a lot easier because we won't have to re-implement the same logic everywhere.
Okay, so I was freaking out a little bit because before we started the stream, you were like, I changed the code, but what I see here is probably refactoring and making it a bit more concise, but you didn't wipe out all the code to write from scratch, which is good.
No, I didn't wipe everything out. So what we got to work on today, so this is all of the event-driven stuff at this point. So at this point, we are purely events. Received somebody created a resource. We've received an HTTP request about it from Azure Monitor. We've responded to that request and said, okay, cool, and we've queued it up to be tagged. And then the tagging system has gone and tagged that resource group for us. So at that point, now we have a tagged resource group. So at that point, we're done.
So we're ready to write some code then.
But that's all event-driven. And so now we have to move into our sort of ongoing scanning, right?
Yes.
And so the ongoing scanning really needs to achieve, really there are two main things it needs to achieve. One, tag any resources that don't have a tag. So it could be old stuff. It could be something that somehow didn't cause Azure Monitor to fire. It could be a bug in our logic in the monitor config. It could be any number of different reasons. But in the event we come across a resource group that is not tagged, we want to make sure that it gets queued to be tagged, right?
Right.
So that's what our find untagged resources function is doing here, which is a timer trigger. So right now it's on a every 5 minute schedule. That could be 5 minutes. That could be 20 minutes. It could be whatever. In production, maybe we'll go an hour. I don't really know. We'll figure it out later. But for tests, we'll just keep it at 5 minutes, just for the sake of it's already 5 minutes, and I don't want to change it. But you'll notice that, again, because our functions are really just host shims in front of sort of bigger services that are actually handling the work, there's not really a whole lot happening here. Primarily, this scanner object is we're calling the scan for untagged resources on here, and that's part of the scanner thing.
Yes.
And like little Bobby Tables says, I love Robert Tables, by the way. That's probably the best name I've seen. As we're talking about the chat too, once we've isolated these services, it makes them a whole lot easier to test. So when we do write some unit tests against them, it'll be much easier for us to do that without having to actually talk to Azure, without actually talking to ARM or doing any of the actual work. We'll just handle connecting up through and mocking out the things that we don't need. Like, we know what an Azure Monitor alert looks like, and we're not testing what Azure monitoring alerts look like, and so so there's no reason for us to test whether or not Azure Monitor is actually sending an alert, because it's a service that we're consuming. We don't really have access to do any type of testing outside of just creating resource groups and seeing if they get fired. So yes, testing will certainly be on the docket fairly soon, because we're going to have to start doing it soon. So let's go look at our scanners. This is kind of where I left off yesterday. We're going to have to pick some stuff up. Robert Tables. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I'm getting distracted. So this is where we're going to have to do most of our work today. So we've got to scan and find resources that don't have tags. And then we also need to find tags that are expired so that we can delete them, right? So we can queue them up for deletion. And then we also want, because we talked about sending notifications, we also want to find things that are near deletion. So these three methods, there's really nothing that dramatically different from each one of them. We're scanning for untagged, we're scanning for expired with a specific date time of right now, or an offset of right now, and we're going to scan for expired again, only we're going to add day. We're going to add a day. Oops. We're going to add a day to it. So
more or less they execute the same code, just slightly different query. I wonder if we could parameterize that, or is it, or are the queries quite different so we can't really parameterize the execution there?
Well, we can go look at it. So let's go look at what this is doing. So this right now is just a date time offset of 3 days, right? Because in my opinion, I'm thinking, well, I want to find stuff that's going to be deleted in the next 3 days, right? So let's go look at our scanner. Now, there's a bunch of other stuff we'll come back around to. Let's look at our queries in particular. So we're using resource graph. Okay, Resource Graph's available for everybody in the Azure portal, and you can use it in PowerShell, and there's an API and everything for it too. So in our scan for untagged resources, all we're really doing is writing our query, and we're looking for where tag is null, where the expires tag is missing, right?
Okay.
And we're also filtering to resource groups as the type. Because from what we're doing, we're tagging and deleting resource groups. If this was more broad for you, if you wanted to cover every resource, not just a resource group or whatever, then we would just change this to have a different thing. Because we're using resource containers also pulls back things like subscriptions, and we don't want subscriptions. Lord help me if I'd tag and delete my own subscription. I'd be in a world of pain then. So it would be Thazman doing the same thing it did before, which is completely consuming itself. So we're going to filter. We're going to find where all resource groups or resource containers where there is a null tag called expires. So where there is no expires tag, so essentially untagged. Find resource groups, and then we're going to spit out the name, the subscription ID, and the ID. So we're now using a new method here called query resource graph. Let's go look at query resource graph. So query resource graph, this is the thing that actually goes and calls resource graph. So this is part of Azure SDK too. There's actually something called the resource graph client. The resource graph client is what goes and actually issues the queries and then sends the data back. If we look at the kind of data we get back, let me pull this Postman window over here quickly. If we look at the data that we get back, it's expecting an array of subscriptions. It expects a query. And then the data we get...
Zoom in a little bit.
The data we get back is, because this is coming sort of out of like Custo, the data that we get back is we get essentially this columns array, which has a name and a type for each one of the columns that's coming back. So we've got a name, which is one of the names of the columns. It's a string, subscription ID, the ID, and the type, because that was what was in our query. And then we have our rows array, and the rows array has the data, right? And then I'm just looking at the chat too. David Ames, send that to support, because they'll go and notify the right people to make sure that gets handled. So we have this rows array that comes back, and then this just maps to this. So name, subscription ID, ID, and type. Name, subscription ID, resource ID, and type. How do we get back to where I was? Oh no, did I lose my... Oh no, here it is. Subscription, this is the resource ID, and then the type. So in this case, it's a resource group, right?
Yep.
And, oh yeah, we got to go check out... there are two things now we've now been told to go check out in regards to... two things we've been told to go check out in regards to HTTP clients, replacements for Postman. There's one REST client in VS Code directly, and then what is this one? Hopscotch.io. We'll have to go check it out. So this is the data that we get back, which is exactly the data that we need. So we'll get Postman out of the way here. And the resource graph client handles all that work for us, right? So when we do this graph client resources async, that goes and issues the query, and since we're sending the query text in, we're just going to use that. Now, one thing you'll notice, and Surly Dev got a new job. Congrats.
Yeah, man, congrats.
I hope it's something fun.
So I assume he's a male, but I should not be assuming, as they say. So Surly Dev, congratulations. You're having fun. No .NET Core yet, but it's fine. It's coming.
And David, no, we can't give you permission to DDoS a blob. So, I wish that we could. In fact, it'd be a really fun stream, but I think it would probably be one of our last ones. Not to mention, DDoSing a storage account in Azure would be pretty significant, because they have a ton of bandwidth.
Yes.
Not to mention
out on the flame.
Not to mention a whole perimeter of defenses around it. So anyway, so we have to make our query, but you'll remember in our Postman thing here, when we send in that request, we have to send in a subscription ID, or sorry, an array of subscriptions, right? So the problem is here, we don't actually know what those subscriptions are yet. So first we have to go find the ones that are accessible to the principal that's running. And this is where things start to get a little, risky, right? So in Azure, when we're running this, we're using what we call managed identity. And a managed identity is an identity that is assigned to an Azure resource. It's an Azure AD service principal, for lack of a better term, but it is set with RBAC, so Azure RBAC, like contributor, owner, reader, whatever. A lot of that is a lot of that is done by I lost my train of thought now. I'm thinking about DDoSing blobs with functions and how technically you would achieve that.
You wouldn't. You'll be throttled.
Oh, so the permissions of the user or the principal, so be it you when you're running locally,
yep,
or a managed identity, or even a service principal that you manually create, those permissions are what's going to dictate what you can and can't do in here. So obviously my user account has far more permissions on it than, say, a service principal or a managed identity who would have access to my subscriptions. So we have to be really, really careful here, and that's another thing that we have to build today, is a subscription allow deny list. So let's look at find accessible subscriptions. Now, you'll notice I'm adding one in right here, which happens to be my subscription ID, because I did this earlier and ended up getting 900 subscriptions back, which was going to be bad. But what we're going to do is we have to go get an access token, and we're going to make a call against management.azure.com/subscriptions. And this gives us a subscription list, right? So there's a whole lot of code here. There's a whole lot of code that I hate that we even need it, but ultimately we do. We have to go get an access token, and that access token we're going to use against the Azure Management API to get the subscriptions in the subscriptions list, and we're going to end up with a whole list of subscription IDs that come back out of that. So we take all of those, we join them together, we add them to this collection, and we send it back.
Yeah.
So we need to go look at this token provider, but we'll come back around to that. Right now, we're short-circuiting it, and we're adding one, and since I'm not doing a force refresh, we're not actually going and getting any. But we will have to go get some once we get our allow list implemented. So we have find accessible subscriptions. That's going to send us back a list of subscriptions, and then resource graph. We just plunk that into the query here with our list of subscriptions, along with the query that we sent earlier, and then we end up getting some back out. We end up with our list. So we end up with that same structure that we got a little bit ago. Now, because all of the field names and everything else that come back are completely dynamic and they're up to you in the query, we kind of have to get creative with how we parse that back out. And unfortunately, the SDK doesn't really give us a whole ton of help in that, or at least not in a way that I could figure out.
You don't have a strongly typed model there to bind to?
Well, no, because it's strongly typed as much as it can be, in that there's a data object that has rows and columns objects, but there's no we don't know what the structure of that row is. If we look at the data that we get back, I mean, we have data, we have columns, right? So this is sort of the metadata of what columns we have. We have rows, but the rows, this is not like a JSON object. This is saying, hey, you've got columns with these names, and then it's saying you've got rows, and these are your rows. It's just an array of values. There's no sort of, so they're positional. So because we know name is first, then subscription, then ID, then type, when we look at the rows, we see that same structure, right? I gotta stop clicking that one. No, I don't want to do any of these things. I want to be back to where I was. So I'm sure we could be much smarter about how we marry these two together, and it may be something cool to do in the future, to where we maybe parse out the columns and then start marrying the rows to the columns themselves. But I was in a hurry, so instead, because we know they're positional, our resource ID and our subscription ID, we know those are 0 and 1 because they're in our query that way. So if you were to modify the query, then this would have to change. So a little brittle here, a little bit of a risk, of course, that this at some point might be something you'd have to go and keep an eye on. But ultimately, the output of this is a collection of resources. And the resource search result is a pretty basic object that just has two things: a subscription ID and a resource ID, because that's really all we need to go and affect one of these.
To go and mess with it, right?
Yep.
These are the two elements we need. Perfect.
Yep. So we've got a method to query our graph to go and find things. Now we got to get all this sort of wired up.
Yes.
So let's get all this stuff out of the way, and let's get back to our function. So for our untagged resources, after we have found our untagged resources, which is what our thing here is doing, we really just need to dump those into a queue to go on to back to the tagging thing, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's kind of cool because largely we're essentially going to be doing exactly what the HTTP one is doing, in that it has a queue output, and that queue output sends the data back in. So I'm just going to...
Yeah, slightly different because we don't have to parse the incoming message, right?
That's right.
We already have the resources we need.
Yep. So, let's put a new input. We'll put a new input here, and it's called queue.
Input or output?
Sorry, output. So we've got a new queue output, and because we're not doing HTTP on this one, we actually don't have to use the collector. We could just return from the method. So that would be, let's see, an IEnumerable of tagging request model.
Yep.
And we have our, and we'll call that outbound queue. That's a fine name for it. We don't need a comma at the end. So the one thing we do have to do, you know what? I wonder, can we make this an iList so that I can get an add range on this guy? Maybe not. Now the one thing is, what we're getting back from resources to tag is a
subscription and resource name.
A list of resource search result. But what our model is expecting is a little bit different. The what's that called? The tagging request model is a little bit different. So if we take our resources to tag, I don't know why this.
Yep.
I don't know why this is in red. Do you have any idea why this would be in
red? It was probably something broken on your theme. I wonder if you close and reopen your specific page, if it fixes it, or tab.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. So we'll just do a link projection because it'll be fairly straightforward. So we're gonna do. I don't know why that's red. It's really bugging me though. Let me close this window and we'll reopen it.
So,
there we go.
Something in the settings of.
Yeah. Something.
So many people have been praising your theme, but now it's broken. Still now it's brownish. It's not even red now.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. So we're going to take our resources to tag, and our resources to tag, of course, we've only got 2 units of data there. So here
Correct.
we need the subscription ID, which is going to be subscription ID. And we need the resource ID. So the resource group name is x.resource_ID. So we probably need to sort of unify some of our language here too. So instead of resource group name, maybe we fix this one. I'm trying to think in sort of terms of, is this something that you could in theory use this on any resource, not necessarily just a resource group, although, you know, it's for our purposes, it's going to be group. So we should probably figure out the best way to unify these naming to make it not confusing. Now, this is going to present a problem, however, because we need, essentially we have 2 extra fields. We have owner and we have created and date created, or date created, and we know our date created, right? So date created,
we do.
Since we don't actually know, we could just go look at UTC now. Although, that's a good question. I guess it depends on what we want our logic to be. Do we go back and look at when the resource group itself was actually created and then add an expiration to that? Because that could be immediately, right?
We could, and the problem there is that you get no forewarning, right? So it means that, oh, I found something, it's been running for a while, let me go and wipe it out. So you won't be able to even interrogate that. So from my perspective, I think that'll be bad practice because you won't have any control over it. We want to be able to get some visibility into that and not end up in a situation where you wipe out resources like you did before. So I would say I would do the date time now.
Yeah,
which makes it gives us 30 days of dealing with that resource.
Yeah, so maybe instead of it date created, it's maybe more like date taken under management or something like that.
Or date tagged, right?
Yeah, date tag, date Thazman was enlightened to the presence of this resource group. That might be a little bit too verbose. Oh yeah, I don't need these. I need
date singularity to cover my Azure subscription. Date singularity to cover my Azure subscription.
What does that mean?
Singularity is the AI takes over.
So now the last thing that we need. Oh, I guess these. I need to do these as.
Why are they underlined there?
Because they need to be colons. Because it's because we're using nullable. We're expecting a. Is it subscription ID? Yeah, there we go. It's expecting. It is expecting a parameter to the constructor.
Right.
Okay. And let's see. Created. Is that what it is? I gotta go look at my. I gotta go look at my other one and see what the name is. See what the naming is.
Yep.
Let's go look at our.
You have Tiger. Do you need? Maybe we could use the Tiger. Can we use the Tiger? Oh no, it's processing the alert. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Let me go look at the process alert because I don't have the.
Well, process alert will be different because it expects a JSON object and then it returns something. So for us, it wouldn't work. But
group user subscription ID and created. That's what I'm missing. So group. Or, sorry, subscription. Group name. Created and user. Now we need to figure out what we're going to do for user here.
So this one will be running under a service principal?
Well, yeah. So the user in this case, I don't think we actually know the user in this case because we know the user by virtue of when one gets created. We know the user when it gets created because that's a good call, Bolt, by the way, expiration set date instead of date created. We know the user by virtue of the activity monitor alert that goes out.
Yep.
But I don't think we have that otherwise. Like when
well, you have if you query the resource graph, then you can get the resource owner, right?
Well, but what's a resource owner? What does that mean, right? Like, let's go see. Let's go do a query and see. Let me save.
Is that the same question as what is live?
Huh?
What does an owner mean?
Well, no, but I mean,
almost feels like too philosophical.
I've never seen a property on a resource group called owner, right? Let me just take these out. Well, let's go get our resource.
Well, you have to, don't you? Because this is what also works on locks. So if you apply a lock, then only the owner can take it out. So I assume that the resource group will have ownership information.
Well,
or maybe.
So let's see. So here's a resource group. So it's got an ID, it's got a name, it's got a type, it's got a tenant, it's got a location, it's got a resource group, it's got a subscription.
Oh, yeah.
Managed by is empty.
Maybe.
Provisioning.
Maybe it's the lock that gets an owner, not the resource group. Damn it.
Probably, yeah. See, I don't see any. I don't see any.
Yeah.
I don't see any metadata where anything gets set. I mean, this was from the old Thrazman. These are just arbitrary tags. So,
Code with Son says that the contributor may also be able to remove or bypass a lock. Bypass, no, but remove, yes.
So yeah,
you cannot delete something that has a lock or change something that has a lock, but you can change the lock obviously or remove it. You're right.
Yeah, and I've never seen really. I mean, we see it at the beginning, obviously, because it's whoever submitted the work.
Yes.
But owner could mean any billion different things, right? It could be the billing owner, it could be the resource owner, it could be. I mean, it's kind of up to you and your business what you want to call an owner, right? Could,
well, in that case, I think if we are tagging something as part of the schedule process, it should be the owner should be Thrazman. Like I am setting this tag as part of my process. So in this case, it will be the application, not the owner that created it.
yeah.
Oh, really? I have deleted resource with a lock. If you have permission, it will prompt you if you want to continue in spite of the lock. If you're deleting it manually, I think yes. But if you try to run it as a process, then it will be blocked. That's my assumption. And it could be a wrong assumption, obviously. But it's been a while since I played with locks. Yeah. So for those ones that are on the stream and they don't know, when you create a resource, sometimes it's good to put locks on those resources because you don't want to inadvertently delete it as part of Thrazman, for example, or as part of some other developer going and thinking that they're operating on a dev environment when in reality they're in production. And I've seen this happening with many customers where they wiped out production systems. So what we advise people is to go and set up resources. You can also set up policies against certain groups so you can delete them, for example. But in this case, if you apply a lock, then there are some ways to wipe out resources regardless. As Code with Sean is saying, if you manually try to delete and you're a contributor or an owner of the lock, then you can bypass it. But it's still an extra step, right? So it's not, do you want to delete? Yes. If do you want to delete? Yes. Oh, by the way, there's a lock. So that's an extra step, which makes you think like, oh, if I have a lock, I need to go and look why I put a lock in there in the first place.
Okay, so we're actually going to end up using async collector again because we need to do multiples. So this is just on the docs for the thing. So if we're dealing with a single message, we've got string byte cloud queue message as a type. But if we want to do multiple queue messages, we're still going to have to use a collector. So we're going to use an async collector here,
which makes our life easier, right?
Yep, because now
you can add range.
I believe we can add a range, so that would be outbound queue. No, we can't. Looks like we don't have an add range.
Oh.
No, that's okay. We'll just.
What do you have? Add one at a time. Add async. Right. Okay.
Essentially, we'll just have to add each one. Let's see.
So you have to loop through them.
So, yeah, they're just individual items. Which then it's like, well, if we're going to loop through them, should we just... It's too bad we don't have an add range. It's kind of lame, actually. I don't like that, but whatever.
So submit a pull request to the async collector.
Yeah, maybe that'll be some... Yeah, I'm sure we can find some time to do that, right?
At some point.
So I guess instead of... Maybe we just skip doing a select here at all. We'll just create new ones and put them in there.
Well, at some point you have to create new ones anyway, so I suspect that just do it part of the query and then iterate through the collection.
Yeah, we'll just... I mean, I don't know if the projection is going to be faster or slower that way, now that I think about it.
Create an extension method to handle the logic for you.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So we're going to extend...
async collector?
Yeah, why not? When in Rome, right? I'm just gonna stick it right here for now. All right, so let's go.
Everything in one file. That's the approach.
I'll move it later. I just haven't gotten around to it. So, let's see. We'll call this. This is an async collector, and let's see. And then I guess we'll take another list of T items. Okay, so oops, I never get my parameter names correct. So actually, this is probably is
it underlying T there?
This is going to be.
Do you know why?
Is void anyway. Because we're not add async doesn't return anything, I don't believe. Oh yeah, good call. I guess actually it'll be task because it's going to be a collection of tasks. Add range async. Okay. And then in here, essentially, Oh yeah, and I haven't given this a name. Let's see. Q collector, we'll call it. So for each item in here, we'll do a Q collector. We'll add async our item.
Yep.
We will await that. Okay, and then
Return the collection.
what does that?
Oh no, you don't have to. No, you're operating on the collection.
I mean, do I really need a? I don't really want to have a type parameter here. Although, do I have to because these are typed? Because IAsync collector and IAsync collector of T are two different things, right? Yeah, we have to have a type argument, so I guess we'll have to put one here. Okay. So we'll add range async. Okay, so let's get back to where we were.
And now we can use the add range.
Yep, so outbound queue add range async. And it is, oops, it's essentially just this.
Well, first.
But let's not put that. Let's put this into its own variable first, just so it's a little bit easier. Little bit easier to read.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just call this. Let's change this name. So these are untagged resources, and then our let's see. Resources to tag are untagged resources. There we go. And then we will add our resources to tag here. And because we know the type, or because we have a type, we don't have to we don't have to explicitly have one here, I don't believe, because it knows the type from this. So, okay, cool.
Nice.
Cool. Thanks for the suggestion, Bolt. All right, so we've got, so now we've found our untagged resources, and we are queuing them up to go off and be tagged to go forth in tagging.
Do you need to return Do you need to return anything, or it will execute at the end of the?
No, that's it. It executes at the end.
Perfect.
Yep.
Excellent.
So that's cool. So now we've got our tag output here. Cool. Hey, Code It Live. Wow, you're bringing in a ton of people. We got to get our raid stuff figured out. Make the screen rain and do all that fun stuff. It is. Hey, CLW. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Good to see so many people come in. What were you guys?
Yeah.
You guys building?
Thanks for joining us this morning.
You guys building anything cool today? I hope so. I think we're building something cool, but I guess we'll find out later. I don't know if it's as cool as what it was before, but it's a lot of people.
Yep. It was a lot of people. Yeah. I agree.
Cool. What's up, CLW? Thanks, man. We are working more on Thrazman, so we are building a Azure tag expiration tool, right? So
yeah, we're automating our resource management, so we don't have to do it every time, and then we're adding Alexa and Google Assistant support. Blazor Day at DevReach.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we've been
very nice.
We've been doing a lot of Blazor Wasm with Microsoft Identity.web and or not Identity.web, but with Azure AD. That's been fun. So
yeah. The theme. Everybody's asking about the theme. It's Synthwave 84.
Yeah, Synthwave 84.
Or the theme.
It's such a fun theme that you have to blow up your VS Code. There are very specific instructions on the extension to blow up your VS Code checksums, which is always interesting. So, yeah, fun stuff, fun time. So anyway, we're building an Azure. We're building an Azure resource group tagger and expirer that will go and delete and persist and notify you and tell you that it's deleting stuff. And it's going to let you talk through Alexa to say whatever. Hey, Alexa, how many VMs are still running, which VMs are still running, delete them, shut them down, whatever. So right now we're setting up a bunch of functions to go and handle the heavy lifting of tagging and deleting these resources. So, yeah, be kind of fun, you know. We'll see anyway. We'll find out how much fun it'll be fairly soon. So, okay. So so we've got our untagged function here. So this is on a timer. Every 5 minutes it's going to go. We're going to go find our untagged resources, and ones that are untagged, we're going to queue them up, get them tagged, right? So now we need to go find our expired resources. And really, this is going to be essentially the same thing, right? The only difference really is the query that we're issuing, and there's probably some optimization we could do in here. Excuse me, but essentially, it's going to be the same thing. So we're going to have a queue, although these are going to go to a different queue, right? This queue is definitely going to be different. And I guess this will be on. I guess we need a timer on this one too, right? Like what? Every 5 minutes, every 20 minutes, whatever. We'll do the same 5-minute one for this. In fact, these signatures are going to be almost identical, although we will have a different output queue. The output queue is going to be different on this one because our deletion queue is going to be different from our tagging queue for good reason. We don't want those things to happen. No comment, blazer.ca. Actually, so there are two reasons it's called 425 show. The first one is 425 is the
HTTP code for too early, because we are starting our streams too early in the morning, at least for Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, so I live on the East Coast, so when Christos and I talked about doing a show, I said, yeah, let's do it at 10 a.m. And he was like, okay. And 10 a.m. for me is definitely quite early for him. And being the HTTP status code for too early, 425 felt 425 felt pretty appropriate. And the other side is the area code in Redmond, where apparently I will never go and visit again because we can't seem to get it all together. And I can't.
Yes, the 425 code is.
Yep. So yeah, we are. So we stream here, and we stream on the 425 show, twitch.tv/425 show, Mondays and Fridays, 8 a.m. now Pacific to 10 or 11 a.m. Pacific, depending on the day.
So maybe we should rename our show to 425-ish, because it's not as early anymore.
Maybe not, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming, thanks for watching, and thanks for hanging out. And we hope that you like us, because we're going to be back a lot. So
yes,
we'll be back on Friday. In fact, we're going to be back tomorrow, but not on this channel. We'll be on our channel tomorrow. Anyway.
Yeah, 45 tomorrow with Python. So if you guys are fancy seeing some Python auth with Mr. Michael Kennedy, then make sure to join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. Our old schedule, because we have Michael Kennedy to do some Python stuff, and we'll be adding a lot of authentication there. Exciting times.
Yep. So,
right.
Yeah. So,
and today,
what are we doing?
Today it's all about Azure Functions with C# and a lot of Azure SDKs and a little bit of identity. So, always fun to automate stuff with functions.
Yeah. So essentially here, so we've got our untagged scanner. This is going to go find all of our resources that need to be tagged. We've also got. Thank you, CLW. We try, man. B2C is. B2C is super straightforward unless you read any of the docs or any of the marketing material, in which case it sounds like it's super confusing. But in reality, it can be fairly straightforward. So we're trying to find a good happy path with B2C to say, yeah, this is how you use B2C. You know what I mean? And use it to replace a password database and use social, and that's it. You don't have to do any of the super complex stuff that's all over the docs. You can just hang out and use it as a username and password database, just not one that you have to control, use, manage, own, and own the life cycle of. So, okay.
Yes.
So let's get to our expired ones. The big difference here is going to be instead of having a queue for creation, we're going to have a queue for expiration. Resource group expired queue name, but it's going to use this. We'll use the same storage account for all the queues. We don't need to worry about different ones, but we actually don't have any sort of. We don't really have any. We haven't written our deletion methods yet. We haven't done our deletion, so we're scanning, but we're not deleting. So we need to go get to work on our deletion methods.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
One step at a time, man.
But yes, we need to know what we need in order to delete the resources. That's what we need to figure out next. So, however, we're an hour and a half in. Time to take a quick break. Go, restrooms, coffee, whatever it is you like.
Yep.
We will be back in 5 minutes, and we're going to do a resource deletion, and then we're going to go run it and see how many of my resources survive. Back in 5.
Let's run it on your subscription, not mine. Then if everything works, then I will deploy it on mine. How about well, on the MS Dev, not our channel.
All right, we're back. We are back.
We're back.
All right.
Back from the dead.
Okay.
So people are demanding a virtual party, apparently.
A virtual party. Well,
yeah.
I don't know how we do a virtual party at noon on a Monday. This is as close as we're gonna get. Should we
writing code?
Should we just
with code.
Should we just dump the code and just go find some good music? You know, a friend of ours runs a radio station, but I think it's only valid in Europe. I don't think we can stream music in America. It's too bad.
Vlad Dubois is right. It's 5 p.m. somewhere. It's midnight somewhere else. We can always party on, right?
It is. All right.
Yes.
So we gotta start deleting. We gotta start deleting resources.
Yes.
We're not deleting them right now, so we got to get to deleting them, right? So let's see. Well, I guess we should probably clean this up because this file's getting a little big. So
you think?
Yeah, just a little. So let's take our functions. Let's take our functions thing here.
Yep.
And let's move this to functions.cs.
Yes.
So at least when we go look at the function, so these are the things that are actually exposed to the function, right? So this is our resource group create, tag resource group, our scanners for untagged and expired, and for upcoming deletion. So this file is much smaller and a lot more sort of manageable, right? Ideally, we'll get to a state where if you want to write your own shim, this is the only thing that you have to replace. If you don't want to use Azure Functions for one reason or the other, or you can't use it, eventually we'll be to a place where all you have to do is rewrite this file, and the rest of the file all stay. The rest of the code will all stay the same.
Yeah, so you change your API. Your API stays the same. The implementation details change.
Mm-hmm.
So you could run it against AWS. Just thinking.
I suppose you could. You'd have to re-implement all of. Then you'd have to re-implement everything that's talking to the backends, but
maybe that would be the next step for Thrazman.
Yeah, it just goes to all of your AWS and GCP resources and deletes them immediately and migrates them over to Azure.
Other people's.
Hey, we could get promoted if we built that, I think.
That would be the amazing computer, right? Going to other clouds and copying resources across.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? No, nobody would hate us for that. So let's move our extensions out. We don't need those in here anymore. And so let's see. So we've got our tag service. So this is the thing that's handling the tags. That doesn't really seem like the best place to put our deletion method. Although, do we really need a service that's super specific to tags, or should we just have one that also handles deletion? Should we also just have this resource management service or whatever, and have a single class that handles both the deletion and the tagging?
Right now, this is how I would approach it because it's not as big as of a code, and we don't really need to have that kind of separation of concerns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we need to rename this again to Robert Tables. To Robert Tabla.
Version 3, because this is already version 2. I think we need to go to version 3 next.
Yeah, let's just do it here. We'll just do it. Let's rename this instead of the resource tag service. Let's call this the
Robert Table service.
The resource management service, maybe. Or I mean, we could call it the Bobby Tables service, but
yeah, but that implies that we're dropping everything, which is not the case.
The Robert Tables service, yeah, but no, that's true. We aren't dropping everything. We'll just call this the resource management service, right? And we'll rename our interface too, just for the sake of simplicity, resource management service, and we'll rename it everywhere else that it is. Okay.
I wonder if anyone in the audience now will be like, or our viewers will be like, oh, service, that's code smell. You should not name something service.
Yeah.
But I always like to go back and say, oh, well, why would you name it?
I mean, we could call it resource manager, but that might get confusing.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh yeah.
We could call it.
Keep the service. Keep the service. I like to be pedantic and explicit.
We'll be.
I don't care about code smells.
We'll be pedantic and explicit. That's okay. We'll change it later. I mean, I changed this all last night, so whatever. Okay, so public async task delete resource. So here we're going to end up with a new model to do a deletion, but let's go figure out what we have to do first to do a deletion. So that's still going to be resources management client.
Yep.
Which we need to inject into this class, by the way, which we'll come back around to. So at a minimum, we're going to need the subscription ID and the resource ID. I think that might actually be the only thing that we need.
Well, we can check at the delete function of the management SDK and see what we need, right?
Yep. Once we get in there, we'll come in and make some changes. So the first thing we need is this resource manager client, which I'm just going to take these because we're gonna refactor those out of here anyway.
Yep.
So let's put these in here. We got a resource manager client and the, let's see, resource manager client dot delete. Oops.
It'll be delete async, I assume. No?
Resource groups dot start delete async is what we need, and it needs a resource group name because
we're the authenticated management client against the subscription, right?
Well, yeah. Now there's some interesting. There are a few interesting things here. First, so I've been trying to be generic and say resource ID, but because we're explicitly calling resource groups here, this is explicit now to resource groups, right? So, and because that's part of the thing, I wonder if there's a generic. Let's see, resource manager client resources start delete async. So that's resource group name. So that's looking for group name, provider namespace, parent resource path, resource type, resource name, and API version.
Nice one. Arm leg.
Oh, that's pretty
Azure
good.
Resource Manager logical expiry grabber.
Arm and leg. I love it.
Arm and leg. Yeah.
Can I put an ampersand in a class name, or is that going to blow up? I don't think it's going to let me do that.
Yeah.
Arm and leg is pretty excellent, though. In fact, I'm going to put that in our notes as another one. Arm and leg. Azure Resource Manager logical expiry. What was it? Grabber.
Logical expiry grabber.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Naming things is hard, so let's rename it 3 more times.
Naming things is hard, but you can always be creative.
So if we were to do a start delete async, it's looking for a resource group name, the provider namespace, which of course we know the provider namespace, the parent resource path, which I believe would be the subscription, the resource
as a path.
Yeah, the resource type and the resource name. And then there's also a start delete by ID, in which case we would just need the resource ID.
Which we already have, so there will be no difference between line 88 and 89 if you were going to use the ID.
Well, let's be more explicit here since we are talking. Well, let's be more I'm a little torn. I'm a little torn because so if we let's look at our resource manager client. So if we have so specifically we're talking about resource groups, right?
Yeah.
But if we wanted to make this generic enough to delete any resource, then something upstream would have to know it needs a resource group ID, a resource ID rather than a resource group name.
Yep.
And we're already doing tagging here, and we're using resource groups. So we'd have to maybe change this too. I
think we should stay with the resource group name or resource group ID. We are operating at the resource group level.
All right. Well, let's keep this, but I'll put a to-do in here to.
Okay.
Explore changes required for using resource ID for any resource. Okay. Now, so what that?
So the problem here will be, how are you going to? So the resource group manager is tied to a specific subscription, because we cannot pass the subscription as an optional, right?
No, yeah. Well, we have to do a specific. We have to do a specific subscription. Yes, but we know that. We know the caller knows.
Okay.
The caller will know what the subscription ID is.
So if I have three subscriptions, it's not going to run across all three subscriptions.
No, because our scanner knows the subscription ID and the resource name.
Okay.
And we're gonna.
So
that's true. We do get the resource ID out. We can get the resource ID out of resource graph. Yeah. But you know what? Yeah, you're right. Let's not perseverate on it. We can always come back and change it, because we should have it. We should have it in the alert. We should have it in we definitely have it in resource graph. I think we've got it in the alert.
ASK Milk, what are we working on? We are working on an automatic tagger for your resources and automatic deleter. So when something gets created in Azure, we tag it automatically with some tags that are specific to this solution. And then we have a task that goes and scans the subscription for any untagged resources. And we have a scheduled task that will run every 5 minutes, for example, or every hour, how often you want, to take those resources and delete them. And at the end of that, we'll extend it to use Alexa and Google Assistant. So you can go back and say, hey, Alexa, tell me which resources are due for deletion in the next 2 days or something like that. And you'll be able to control your resources via digital assistants.
Yep. So we're going
to... And right now, we're at the point that we're trying to decide how we're going to delete these resources. That's the last step.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of... this is probably more of a... This is real. Right now, we're just trying to figure out, do we keep it generic enough that you can tag at any level, all the way down to a specific resource, or all the way up at even a management group or a subscription? Or do we focus on just resource groups for the moment? And I think we could do either one, but it's just a matter of making sure we have enough data at the 2 entry points, because there are 2 entry points. There's the event-driven entry point where we come from, where we get an alert from Azure Monitor.
Yep.
And then we have the scanner, which is scanning the resource groups with or not really scanning, but it's querying the resource graph and getting a list of all of them, a list of all the untagged resources, so that we can go and tag them, and then doing the same thing to go and delete them later on. So we're debating: do we make this part that's actually managing the resources? Do we make this generic enough to be resource ID, so any resource, or just sticking to resource groups? I think we're going to stick to resource groups for the moment, and we'll just put a to-do in or put an issue in later to modify this in the future to use resource IDs. Thank you, Bolt.
Bolt.io is right. Yeah. You ain't going to need it.
We're not going to need it. So, okay, it's a good point. Probably shouldn't try to over prematurely optimize everything. So, okay,
exactly.
So all this is going to do is a deletion, right? So that's all this specific thing is doing, is manipulating the resource to go and delete it. Now, one other thing we'd like to have in here would be I think it'd be nice to have a what if.
Ooh, yes.
Then, log deletion, but don't execute, sort of thing. Which we should probably be logging this anyway. We'll do we'll do an information on this one.
We did discuss about also backing up before deletion, right?
Yeah, but yeah, so that's the thing. There are 2 other tasks that we have to do. We have to notify, and we have to back up. So we got to do both of those things.
Yes.
So resource group.
So for now, let's keep it MVP and get to the end.
So let's put a little log in here just to say what we're doing. And cool. Okay. So that's our delete resource. But delete resource is one of 3 tasks that we have to do as part of our deletion. So let's go back and look at our function. So our function has found some expired tasks, right?
Yep.
So we have our expired tags on resource groups, right? Yep. So we've got to so we have to queue those up to be deleted. However, as this is the highest level, I wonder if this is where we do our orchestration. That'll make it easier when we do durable in the future too. I wonder if we orchestrate here, or if we orchestrate one level down from here.
No, I think that's the right location to orchestrate, because you'll find the resources and now you need to delegate.
Yeah, you're right.
The deletion.
So, excuse me. So we found our resources that we need to delete. Or sorry, let's rename this to resources past expiration date, just to be super ultra verbose. And now we need to do two things. We need to notify pending deletion. We need to persist the resource group template to storage, and then we need to actually output to the then we need to actually queue up for deletion. Queue up for deletion. So we haven't done any of our notification work yet. That's probably going to take a while, so let's come back to that one. And so next we need to persist our resource group. We need to persist our resource group template to storage. So now, so this is our find. So this is our scanning function, right?
Yep.
So that's why I'm wondering if we end up with this function that goes and actually does the finding, and so it just finds them, queues them up, and then gets back out. Because if we ask this function to do too much, we're sort of putting all of our failure in one place.
Yeah, we want probably to also re-architect this one, so because some of these things will happen in multiple places, right? Or is it just one place that we have to back up and queue up for deletion? This is the only place, right?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how we want to think about it. Do we want to think about it in terms of tasks that these things need to do, or do we want to think about it in terms of the sort of the business event that has happened? So we found an expired one. So what do
I don't know, man. I mean, I think we're overly architecting this one now. That's my
I'm thinking that so at any point we'd end up in a place where, I mean, the things that happen when we find an expired one are fairly consistent, right? So we found some expired ones. What do we do with them? And we
similar to find untagged resources, right? So it does something and then delegates and comes out.
Well, so when we find untagged ones, we queue them up to go be tagged by a different function.
Yep. Yes.
And then like notifications, we're gonna have to send notifications at various times, right? Now there's probably only one case where we're going to actually delete them, and there's probably only one case where we will persist the the resource group template, right?
Okay.
And we're going to persist the resource group template at deletion just as a backup. So we probably won't ever have to reuse that one. That'll only get used once. We will actually delete the resource group once. And I can't think of another case where we'd want to delete a resource group separately. Although if we tell the Alexa thing, like, hey, go delete resource group ABC, then... But even in that case where we would manually say, please go delete something, we would still want the expiration to happen.
Backup.
Yeah.
Yep.
So... maybe then.
Well, would you automatically expire it and then wait for it to be picked up the next time when you say go and delete something, or do you expect it to be executed on the fly rather than queuing up? Because I say go and delete it for me.
Well, I don't want the thing.
Expect the deletion to execute.
I don't want the thing that finds them to be the thing that deletes them, because all it's doing really is finding the expired ones.
Yes.
And then sending those somewhere else to be actually sort of processed and dealt with. Because we've got this scanner and it's going and it's making this query every, we'll say 5 minutes for right now. So it's making the query. It queues up and says, hey, I found 25 resource groups that are pending deletion, right? So, yeah, like
I agree with Robert.
Yeah,
finding and deleting should be separate.
So
okay.
we should
convinced.
Yeah. So this is when we get into our. Let's see. This is not part of the scanning. This is part of. So this becomes. I guess this first one will be resource group expired with a, so it has expired, right? So here we're going to have a task called, or here we're going to have a method. And this will, I think this will probably end up being sort of the orchestrator, right, of what happens when these various things happen. So we have our task, or we have our method, our function for resource group expired. It's Synthwave 84, by the way, for everybody who's asking about the theme. I feel like I need to print that on a sheet and just like sticky it up here. So resource group expired, we'll just call this, well, for lack of a better term, resource group expired, right? And in here, I think, is where we actually do this work, right? So in resource group expired, this is when we're going to queue up a deletion. We're going to queue up the notifications. We will queue up our persistence, and then we will queue them up for deletion. Now, so these first two things can happen in parallel, right? Because we're not actually making a resource change. So both of these can happen, but this needs to happen after these two. Like, these two can happen in parallel, and they can happen in either order. It doesn't really matter. But this, we can't, because if we delete it before we've persisted it, then we can't persist it if it's gone, right? And if we're going to notify you that we're deleting it, in fact, let's not even call it pending. Let's just call it notification. If we're notifying you that we're going to delete it, I guess that doesn't really matter whether or not you get your notification, because once you're to this point, you can't do anything about it anyway.
Correct.
But yeah, so these two things can happen really at any time, but before we actually do the deletion, these two have to happen first.
Well, no, I thought we were going to provide the ability to postpone the deletion.
That's later. That's before actual expiration. So that's like when you get the notification.
Oh, so if it's well, but do you not want to be notified about the deletion?
Yeah, this is a one-way notification. Hey, I've deleted this.
Ah, right. Oh, delete. Well, that would be resource group deleted and not resource group expired.
Yeah, no, you're right. But that's ultimately a separate one. Like, so that I guess we have expiration.
Yes.
So we've expired. Yep. So I'm looking at expired as being, it is pending. Like, it is about to die. It is on the block, ready to be deleted.
Which also means that you could defer deletion at this point.
Well, but you can't. Like, you wouldn't be able to defer at this point because it's already expired. I guess in my mind.
But I'm sad. What if Alexa said, "Hey, by the way, I'm deleting your resource group." Like, oh my God, no, I changed my mind. I need to keep it for whatever reason.
I feel like you should have said that yesterday when we notify you and say, "Hey, this is going to be deleted tomorrow." I mean, that's.
Are you saying that I can never change my mind? It's like, oh yeah, so you committed yesterday. You can't change your mind.
No, I'm just saying, like, I think that if we now are in a place where we're going to delete and we're going to have to pend and say, oh, wait, we got to wait for the user to say yes or no to this. Like, if we wait for final confirmation, nothing will ever get deleted. Because I'll be like, oh my God, my phone's buzzing and it's annoying me. I'm just going to throw it away. Like, put it on silent, put it in a drawer.
Fine. Let's be committed. I take it. I should have decided yesterday, not today. Go for it.
At this point, the deletion is committed. And will happen.
This one, you're too late.
Yeah, it will happen. Like, and yeah, because we've got to do our 3-day out notification, our 1-day out notification, which is why, like, I think we're ultimately going to end up in a place where we have a function called notify, and the notification. This will be. This will have all the notification goop in here, so this will be Twilio or whatever.
Yep.
Azure Communication Service, which is the new one.
You should try that one. I'm really keen to see how that goes.
Email, etc. And then we'll also have one that's going to handle the persistence, right? So we kind of have...
For there, I had a bit of a flashback when you type ACS. I was like, damn, man. That's like Azure Container Services.
I tell you what, man. I've been
back from the
I've been a Twilio customer for almost 10 years now. And it's...
Club Dubois goes, hey, I saw Twilio magically reappear.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously, maybe we should get Club Dubois to come on the show and help us out implement the notification. What do you say, Club Dubois? Do you fancy?
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll have to get him to come on and do it. That'll be fun. So yeah,
yes.
So we'll get a text.
Come and do it.
I'm gonna send a text and it'll have a GIF of like a nuclear explosion, saying this is your resource group right now. These resource groups are about to get blown up. Okay, so yeah, so this is kind of what I'm thinking is like we have this sort of main thing of the resource group is expired. This is going to be triggered off of a queue. I mean, it's almost sort of like we almost sort of have like public API of like, oh, well, a business event has happened, and then we have all the sort of sub events that make up that overall event. We can call each one of those individually. Because I mean, we'll have to do notifications for different reasons, right? We'll have our pending expiration notifications we have to send out, that sort of thing. And then our persistence, we want to do our persistence. We want to persist to storage too. So, so yeah, so essentially, and this is probably going to be one of the best candidates for durable. So let's just put a do in here, best candidate for durable functions, especially because we need to wait on this and this. Don't do this until this and that are done.
Yep.
Right? So this will probably be the best candidate. So first, let's, I guess, do you want to work on notifications? Well, no, let's say notifications.
No,
let's do persistence first.
Notifications will be Mr. Dubois coming on the show.
That's true. Let's do our persistence, right? So I'm just going to minimize this one, get out of the way. Even though minimizing it with 15 attributes doesn't really minimize it at all.
Why did you make the persist resource group to storage function? Is it because you're going to be doing durables?
Well, no. Well, eventually, yeah. But it's mostly because, like, I essentially want to say, hey, I've got 50 resource groups that need to be persisted because some idiot set their expiration.
Oh, you want to find out? Okay, gotcha.
Some idiot set their expiration date to 12/31/2019, and so I have to go delete all of their resources, and I want to persist them all first. I am that idiot, by the way, because that's what I did last time I built it. So, so here, our persist resource group to storage. This is what's going to go talk to Azure Storage and go save this data, right? Which I think will be kind of fun. So we need to we need to connect up to blob storage. So I guess first we need to get the template from ARM, connect to blob storage, persist the file.
Persist.
Yep, it's pretty straightforward there. And then
so you're going to have an output binding to storage?
Ah, good call. That's a good idea. Because, that's right.
OBS, man. OBS.
That's right.
Pity they don't have a meme here for that, but yeah, that's how you're going to do it. No writing code.
Well, yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. So, in fact, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat just a little bit and go look at the old version because I remember I had to do something a little wonky to make this one work. So, hang on a second. Azure Expiration, I think is what it's called. Azure, probably searching in here for Azure is probably not a good idea for me. I'll probably come back with a few things.
Part of the org and all that. You're going to be pulling everything.
Azure Expiration, was it Expiration Handler is what it was called? No, I don't remember. Let me just go to my repositories. That's going to be easier than putzing around in here trying to find it. All right. No, that's not what I want. Where are my repos? Okay. Not on the first page. That's not encouraging. Expiration. Oh no, you know what it was called? Azure Tag Manager. I bet that's it. There it is. Now, if I remember correctly, I kind of had to cheat on these bindings for blob because I wanted to set the name based on the thing, right?
Ah.
So now this is super old. This is like This is like functions v2, maybe even functions v1. It's pretty old and it's not very good.
Okay.
So don't judge me for this code. Judge me for the code that we're writing, which is probably of similar quality. Here we go. Export template. So export template. So this was the orchestrator. This is what we had to do was the binding, right? Yo, what's up, Mr. Extremely? Welcome.
I feel everyone has a better Twitch handle than me, man.
No, mine's not very exciting either. Mine's just JPDA, which is literally my username almost everywhere except for Twitter. And if I could get it on Twitter, honestly, I would, because I think Azure and Chill has sort of it invokes too many negative sentiments from people. Like, do you know what that means?
I think it's positive. I think it's positive.
Do you know what that's a euphemism for? I'm like, yeah. Remember, it's computers. It's cloud. Nobody, whatever. I'm not going to say that because that'd be mean. So anyway, so here's our old export template. And I remember we had to use the binder because I wanted my blob to have a specific name. So this is going to have a date at which said blob was created in the path, right?
But does it matter? Because technically it gets executed and automatically executed by the next function. So why do you want to overcomplicate things again?
Why is this overcomplicating it? I have to give the blob a name. And in the
good.
Yeah, but look at the attribute. The attribute is expecting a path. Okay. So we have to write our blob, and I have to give my blob a name.
Okay.
See what I mean? So like, how do we dynamically generate a blob name in a function? We can't. I don't know how we could use the attribute to do that.
And you can only bind to blob. Can you not bind to a container?
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. Let's see if we can do that. Blob. Let's go look at the docs.
Yeah.
So Azure Blob Storage function binding. Zoom in. Okay. Blob storage bindings for Azure Functions overview. So we want an output. Okay. So
yeah, and while you're looking for that, let me respond to Sahil, who came to us from YouTube. Yes, we used to stream on Tuesdays. Tomorrow is going to be our last Tuesday, actually, that we're streaming on our original channel. That's because we're now streaming on both Microsoft Developer and our channel. So that means that we can be in more places for you guys. And we found that Mondays and Fridays at 8 a.m. work slightly better for most people. So yeah, that's our new schedule. So thanks for joining us, Sahil, and hopefully we'll be seeing you more on Mondays and Fridays.
Okay, so this has sample images, it has name in squiggles.
See, dynamic.
So where's that coming from? So the blob trigger in this case is sample images name, which gives us a stream. Oops. So
that's from the trigger, though, right?
That's the name coming from the trigger.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but this sample is disingenuous. It's like, oh yeah, you've totally got dynamic stuff in the name, which you can do because you're going to get it from an. I don't like that. Anyway, so yeah, I just don't see. Let's look at what the attributes and annotations are. Let's see. Blob takes a path to the blob and a file access parameter, read or write. Okay, gets that connection. Sure, cool. We'll go to the output example just in case. So name. Let's see. Connection usage. So you can do all sorts of outs, but I don't see cloud. Oh, there's cloud blob container.
There you go.
So I wonder if we could use cloud blob container. Requires the in binding directions. Oh. So let's see. So the blob container requires an in binding direction in function JSON or file access read in a C# class library. However, you can use the container object that the runtime provides to do write operations such as uploading blobs to the container.
Right. So you need to define it as an inbound binding.
This sounds like the blah 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 law blog. Blah 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 lobs a law bomb. I mean, Arrested Development is probably one of my favorite television shows. It was, I can't believe it. And the Netflix ones are absolutely atrocious. So I guess
which one is that?
Arrested Development. It's one of my favorite TV shows. And there's an attorney, and his name is Bob Loblaw, Loblaw. And at one point, they're in a big case, and the newspaper headline says Bob Loblaw lobs a law bomb. In fact, I think I'm going to work with...
the just compression methods for... compression for what? For writing to the blob? BW Jenkins? Not sure where that refers to.
Yeah, so we are actually not... Well, see, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, how do I get... Requires the inbound... So we're actually not doing anything with images. Oh, we're probably not going to do... I mean, do we even need compression? It's just JSON. It's just going to be some JSON.
Nope, just JSON.
I don't know how we could choose it, short of going the full binding route. Maybe we can. We'll have to look and see in the config if there's a way we can override that. So... Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that was just the X resize was from the sample in the docs, which is around resizing images. So that's where that came from.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be persisting Azure Resource Group templates before we delete resource groups.
I wonder if it would be just simpler to use the Azure SDK and be done with it.
I'd really rather not use the SDK if I don't have to.
You and your avoidance of SDK.
But it's here and it's available. We just need to figure out how to make it work. I mean, this is all good feedback too. We can go back and say, hey, yeah, this is really cool, except it's nearly impossible to use. That's fine too. That's good feedback. I mean, there's already 400 libraries in here. I don't want to add another one. If I'm sure that's what it uses under the hood. So,
okay, so let's see. Do they have any examples with Cloud Blob Container? I'm pretty sure they do. Just do a search for it.
Literally the only place on the page that uses it.
Well, there will be an Azure sample somewhere.
So let's go to Google and see what we find.
The docs are always missing at least one detail that makes it work.
Yeah,
that's a fair point.
In this case, it's the detail of literally how to use it. So, okay.
A minor detail.
Hey, look, here's a Stack Overflow question. Let's see what happened here. Azure Function Access, blah, 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 blah. All I want to do is execute a get on an HTTP trigger function and return stream content from the Cloud Blob container. Seems pretty straightforward. I don't see why this is so hard. Also understand. So let's see what we have here. Blob storage input bindings. This is blob.
We sympathize, right? Yeah.
Yeah, see, this is just not...
So they have an HTTP trigger. They don't have a... Is that the input binding?
No, this is the... Well, this is... Yes, this is... Excuse me, yes, this is the input binding.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not...
Default binding.
So that's not very useful. So let's see if anybody else has done this. Cloud Blob container... binding the container. Here we go. And it's an issue, which means it may or may not work. Can you provide an example of Cloud Blob container? So we have...
Did they provide?
So it says that it has to be an in, which is kind of interesting. It has to be an in...
Counterintuitive, I would say. Not interesting.
Yep. Seems like it says it has to be an in parameter, which is kind of interesting. So let's see here.
I guess this initializes the container client, and then you can use it further down.
So error indexing method, yeah. So that doesn't work. So what this is what it kind of looks like. So that doesn't work. So what? Let's see.
But his problem is can't bind to blob. So I think it's the oh, there you go. Is that an example?
Well, the problem is it doesn't work. What he's saying is that it doesn't work, and what the docs are saying is that you should be able to treat it as an input. So, oh Lord, you have to change. Oh, yeah, we're not rolling back storage versions because Any,
Oh,
anyone
no,
who remembers
no, no,
anyone
no.
who remembers storage and functions v1 knows that's probably going to be a disaster. I'll try one more thing. We'll find the binding and see. So essentially, it's saying you can use it as an input binding, or you can get it by virtue of being an input binding. But
Yeah, I agree, Club Dubois. It's a bad trigger. Well, it's not a trigger really. It's an input binding. It doesn't trigger the.
No, I think it was talking about
the function.
I think it was talking about functions v1.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay, well, so here's what we'll do. I'm going to go back to what we did before, which was this is the old one, right? So in this case, what this one's doing is we're using a binder, and the binder is sort of the way to manipulate the binding programmatically instead of using attributes. So instead of using an attribute called blob, instead we're going to use the binder, and we're going to essentially create this attribute, but at runtime, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what we need in here is a binder called binder. I guess we could call it something else if we really wanted to. And let's see. So really, these are essentially the attributes that we would put in the code directly, but because we want them to be a dynamic, we're creating a new blob attribute, which is the equivalent of the blob input, and we have a storage account attribute to what the storage account is going to be, and then we're using a text writer to actually do the write, right? So yeah, and like QB2, for the most part, everything's the same. There are definitely some different behavioral issues, particularly around things like popping UI windows and opening browsers and stuff for things like interactive login from a console and whatever. But for the most part, it's relatively straightforward. And API surface wise, they're quite complete, although there are probably a couple of small changes here and there. It's all about the implementations underneath. So I'm going to take these two with us because these are the two that we need. So we have an attribute, and then we're going to write to text file. So these are the two that we're going to need. This is using the old Fluent library, so we're not going to be using that anymore.
Right.
So let's get connected up to blobs. So we have our attribute, and we need some configuration, but for the moment, let's just put in here a, our, let's see, Thrazman export. We've got a date time of the day of now that we deleted it, so as of this point.
Yep.
And then we're going to have our resource group name, which we're going to need. And then we're just calling it a JSON file, right? Resource group name. Okay. This format document did not seem to work very well with my with these extra things here. Maybe it's because the code won't compile. So we're going to create a new blob attribute. This is the equivalent of doing blob here, right? So yep. We're just programmatically creating it because this wants a string and we don't know the string yet.
Yeah.
So we've got our binder, and then what is this telling me? Oh, that's right. We have there's a new way to do usings, which is, in my opinion, actually makes it a little bit more difficult to read, but different story for a different day. And then, oh no, that's a cool syntax. I don't think I've seen that one before. That's the string format on date time. That's cool. You can just colon it when you're doing interpolation. That is super cool.
Nice.
Love that. That's awesome. Okay, so we've got our date time, and then I wonder if maybe we ought to put a unique identifier in front of this, or maybe even behind it. So we'll just do like a GUID, new GUID here.
Probably at the end, maybe, so you can interrogate easily.
That's a good idea.
And then I would also concat the new GUID to maybe the first 8 characters. Not concat, sorry. Split and grab the first. Should be first.
That's not going to blow up. I'm just kidding. I mean, we could also just take, yeah, we'll just do what? First 8 characters?
Yeah.
Take 8. Okay. So we're going to need a resource group name, which we'll definitely need that because for our other stuff here too. Then we're going to do, so we're going to create a, we're going to do a bind on the text writer. Yeah, we do a substring too. That'd be fine. Let's just do a substring.
Thank you, BW Junkie.
We can do a substring 0, 8. Okay, yeah, because otherwise we've got a char array. We're going to create another string after that. So, okay, so we've got our path, we've got our attribute, which we'll need to figure this out for what our storage account is. I think it's called main. We'll have to figure out what that name is and come back to that. But then, so we're going to bind a text writer to our blob binding. So this is essentially going to be what writes that out. With these specific attributes, and then we're going to write. We are going to write the template JSON. So now we got to go get the template JSON. So in order to get the template JSON, we need to get reconnected back up to Azure. Oh, I need to. This needs to be changed. It's no longer called the tag service, is it?
Nope.
It's called the management service.
And I think you also need to expose a property, probably a static there, to allow us to use that same client.
I don't know what this means. Actual command not found. So, where are we connecting to Azure and other places? I guess. So we need to go and get the template out of ARM. Let's see. Where are we doing that? We're connecting to ARM in other places, but I guess we're using these other objects to go and do it. So those are our scanning functions. Don't care about those. This is our... I
thought the connection was happening outside the functions. It's in the helpers, right?
It is, yeah. So let's go look at those. Which are back here.
Which means that you probably need another helper for these things. That's why I said we need to create a static somewhere that allows us to reuse that object.
Well, these are all these are all injected now. So we'll have to we'll need to inject the management the Azure management client. But so this is our management. So we'll have to go get. We need to go get a resource group.
Yep.
So this is tag resource. Let's just go. Let's create another one in here. We'll call this. Get resource group by name. String group name. Actually, get resource group template by name. Or, in fact, not even get. We'll call this an export. Export resource group template by name. Because that's, I think, what the actual method call is. So in our... Let me go grab one of these.
Resource manager. Yep.
That was in our tag resource. Here's where we need these two. We'll grab these. We're going to move those later. So we're going to need our subscription ID. And we need our group name. So once we get this, once we get our resource group request, let's see, we need our value, which is our resource group type, and then here, I hope, is the export method. Is it here? Is it here? Oh, it doesn't look good. I wonder if we have to do it a different way. Resource manager client. Oops. Resource groups. Export.
Deployment maybe?
Start.
Is it?
Start export template.
Ah,
so it needs a resource group name. Easy enough.
Sweet.
We happen to have that. So we need a resource group name.
So you don't need line 98. You can wipe that out.
Yep, we don't need that. So we, what else? Now we have other parameters here. So let's see, we've got an export template request parameter. So new export template request. Let's see what those parameters are. In fact, let's go look at the docs. Because this is going to get a little hairy because here. So let's go look at the docs.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you don't know it by heart? No, I'm a bit disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, clearly.
That's unacceptable. How dare you?
So this is part of the Azure SDK. Start export templates, resource group operations class. Okay. Start export template async. This has export template request. Here we go. So these are the parameters we can. Is there anything else here? No. Export template request. An export template request has options and resources. So the IDs of the resources to filter the export by. Oh, that's interesting. So I guess if you wanted to
exclude something, right?
Yeah, if you like said, just give me the SQL databases in this resource group, or just give me the VM disks or something, maybe. Okay. So the options, the export template options, a CSV formatted list containing 0 or more of the following. Include parameter default value, include comments, skip resource name parameterization, and skip all parameterization.
Ah. Are there defaults for these? I wonder.
Hmm?
I wonder if they're defaulted, so if you don't pass them, if it will default to something, which it doesn't say here.
Let's go look here. Let's see. Does it say anything here? No, it does not. Yeah, I wonder what the default is. My assumption is it's going to be the same. My assumption is it will be none of these, right? Because I don't believe when you export from the portal, I don't think you have include comments.
But it parameterizes everything.
Right, and these are both skip.
Ah, skip. Right.
I wonder.
So it probably includes it.
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder if maybe if you don't include these, none of these happen.
Yeah.
Which we'll have to.
Let's go with the default and see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
we'll have to tweak these a little bit and figure out which set makes the most sense. But yeah, let's not worry about it for now. So we should just need group name then.
Yep.
So group, although I think it was looking for one more thing. Yeah, it looks like it's required. So we'll just do a new one, even though we're not actually going to put anything in it. Yeah. Put an enter here so we can get some of that off. Okay, cool. So we're not going to send in any parameters yet. We'll put a to do here. Tweak based on output and ease of redeploy, because some things we may wait. We may not. I don't know. There may be a reason. Once we get to the point of let's go redeploy something from a template, we may find that being parameterized is like a total pain, and we want to we want to pull back on it. So okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Export resource group by name. So back in our functions here, we have, I think it's called Tagger, which is a bad name for it now. In fact, let's go rename it so that I don't forget to do it later on, because now it's a manager. So let's call this the resource.
It's been promoted to a manager from just a simple Tagger.
Now we have to figure
in a matter of hours.
Now we have to figure out if it's going to work. Resource manager.
Who cares about working?
Manager. There we go. All right, resource manager. Resource manager. Cool. And then all of my other things that are going to blow up. Let's change that to resource manager. Nothing like wrapping everybody else's libraries with your own because you're too pedantic to take the API that an API designer gave you. Okay.
I didn't say that. You said
I said it. Okay. So this is no longer the tagger. Now it is the resource manager. And here we're going to do an export. Oh, we got to update our interface too. See, like I like dependency injection because it makes it easy for us to go write tests, which we're absolutely definitely going to do, right? We're absolutely going to write tests, but it means I have to update all my methods in 2 places, and that's kind of annoying.
Yep.
And then this is going to be, I guess it's just going to be a string, right? I mean, export resource group template async. And I need to figure out which one we're going to do here. So delete resource.
There you go. If you don't test, it won't fail. Problem solved. Like Robert Table says.
That's true.
Just don't test.
That's true. So
no test, no failures. Boom.
Let's get this.
YOLO-driven development. Yep.
Are we still putting async at the end of things? I mean, if it's returning a task, chances are it's async.
Well, you know what they say about assumptions.
Well,
I like to be explicit.
I guess since these are async, maybe we should call ours. Well, whatever. That's just a squirrel. We'll clean it up later. So export resource group template by name is what we need to call, and it wants a subscription ID and a group name right now.
Does the start export template async return something? Because right now we're just awaiting the method, but I wonder if there's a result.
There is a result. Exported template. And then essentially we're just going to return the exported template.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a resource. Let's see. Oh, we've got to do an execute async on this guy too. I think. Or is it? No, I guess we don't. So the exported template is a resource group's export template operation. So
is there a result on that?
There's a value. That's what we're looking for. So if exported template has value, oops, then return exported template dot value. If it doesn't have one, this will be a task of string. Oops. Apparently my caps lock is on. So this will be a task of string. We're going to return the value, but the value, apparently the value is of type, let's see, value. What is value? Value is a resource group export result. Okay.
Sweet.
Then there's a template that hangs off of that. And is that a string or what is this? No, that is an object.
Oh.
Okay, what kind of object, I wonder? So the value here is a resource group export result. Let's go look, see if we can figure out what this is.
Yep.
A resource group export result. And the resource group, let's see, resource group export result.
So we're trying to grab the JSON more or less that will be the template,
that's
but trying to get there.
So we get a result. So here's
Code was on saying, well, but you can't get there from here.
So here's template.
Uh-huh.
It has a JSON property attribute on it called template. That's good.
But it's an object.
But it's an object. Okay. I mean, I guess we can two-string it to start and see if we actually get a template out of it. But seems a little.
Easiest way to find out.
A little strange, but okay. I guess it's still preview, right? So maybe it's okay. A possible null. Oh, what in here is nullable? So we're saying that it has a value, so that's not null. Value is not null, but template. It also says template is not null. Interesting, but it's saying. Oh, is it because we're not returning? Because I'm not returning string.empty otherwise? Yeah. Okay. No, it still doesn't like that.
Oh, that if statement really works. Mr. Extremely is asking. Yeah, I think it's if export template has value,
Yeah.
return.
So
Return.
I'm saying we possibly are going to return a null reference, but the exported template is not null here, it says, nor is the value, because we're checking it anyway with has value, and the template is not null, but there's a possible null reference return. Interesting. I wonder which part of it it's considering could be null. Interesting. I don't know. We'll have to look and see. So put our to-do up here so it's not in the way. So if it has value, return that.
Yep.
Otherwise, return an empty string, I guess. And then if the string's empty or white space, we'll just not write it in the function, right? So let's get back to our function here. So here is our function. This has got an export resource group template by name, and it needs a resource group name, which of course we don't have yet. So we'll call this template data. Let's go modify this here, task of string, and it's going to expect a subscription ID. Subscription ID and a resource group name. There we go. I'm going to check this signature against. Oh, it's good. No more squigglies. That means we're good. Ship it. Okay. Export resource group template by name, and then yeah, we're going to have to get something in here too. This will be our input. Our queue input, or maybe our different function or our durable functions input in the future too. So we're going to need that. So in here is going to be our resource group name, which we have not yet defined. Resource group name, all that looks good. And then our file is going to be, what we're going to write is template data. And let's put a quick guard up here that if string is null or white space template data, we're not going to export anything. Yep. We will just return, because there's nothing for us to do if our string is null or white space. There's no point in saving an empty string.
Why null or white space and not why null or empty?
Because the internet told me to do it that way.
What?
Yeah, apparently. I think it's faster. But we can take a. Let's see. We'll take a quick. We'll take a quick detour and see which one we should be using.
Yeah, let's educate ourselves and the users, because I knew that this existed, but I always use null or empty.
It's a convenience method that does two things. It either looks for an empty string, or sorry. So if you, essentially, if you've got spaces, so it does is null or empty in addition to.
Do a Twitch vote. There you go. Do a Twitch vote.
I don't know if can we do a vote? Are we allowed to do votes on this other channel? I don't know. I don't see any way to do a vote. I don't see any way to do a poll. That's too bad. Okay, cool. So anyway, so we got our is null. So we're going to do is null or white space, because that way, if it is empty, if we get, for some reason, we get something like with a bunch of spaces that still has no meaningful data in it, at least we can toss it out.
Yep.
So there you go. Easy enough. So we're going to do is null or white space on that one. If there's no template data, then we're going to just get on out of here. And if there is, we'll get our attributes configured, so we have a name for our blob that we're going to create. We need to get our main storage connection here, which we need to check and see what that is. And then we bind up and we write. Cool. So I believe this is called main storage connection, but we will go and check to make sure that's the name of the setting. So it's kind of weird, because the storage account connection attributes, they're looking for the name of the setting that maps to your storage account connection string, which is kind of strange, because when you use when you use settings otherwise, so it's called this is called main queue connection. I guess we'll rename it to main storage connection, since we're going to use it for both.
Yep.
So main queue connection should all be in the functions file. It looks like they are. And we will just swap those out with storage. Okay. Back to our persistence. So this should do our persistence for us. So now we need to deal with the data that we're getting in, and it's two values. We've got subscription ID and resource ID that we're going to need, and I believe we already have an object for that we can use and let the queue handle pulling that in and out. So that is the resource search result. Should we call it resource search result or something more generic? Because, I mean, it has pretty much everything we need for most of the operations. The subscription ID and the resource ID.
Correct.
So should we not call it resource search result and call it... Well, I mean, I guess we found it, right? It's a resource search result. I think that makes sense. So... I'm just looking at the chat again. Resource search result.
Don't get dragged into it. Don't even mention it. Move on.
What is it? What's everybody talking about?
It's tabs versus spaces.
Oh, is that still a thing? Do people still talk about that? I figured the IDEs just fix it now. I thought tabs were more accessible than spaces for people who use screen readers and stuff.
See, now we got dragged into it. I am a tabs person as well.
I thought that was the whole thing, was that tabs were more accessible for folks who are using like assistive technology. I mean, I could be wrong.
Robert Tables is fanning the flames. Now he's like, is a hot dog a sandwich?
A hot dog sounds good because it's way past lunchtime for me now and I'm hungry, but I don't know. I guess maybe I'll ask my wife if she'd like a sandwich for lunch and then make her a hot dog and see what she does. Okay.
It's a cheesecake and pie. See, we got so squirreled right now.
Okay, we're going to have a queue input, and our queue input's going to be very similar to our other queue inputs, right? So let's just put this here. It's main storage connection now. Although we need a queue. This is not our queue. We need a queue input. So let me go check the docs on what that syntax looks like. Let's see, Azure functions, here we go. Queue storage output.
We need an input, right?
We need a trigger, yep. So we've got a queue trigger and it'll be string my item, but it actually won't be string my item. It'll be a little bit different, but that's cool. So we'll get my item. Just go grab this. In fact, we've already got one in our code. So we'll just go grab one of these from up here. Here it is, queue trigger. I mean, the YAML folks solved the discussion by making everything a space, right? Like if you put a tab in a YAML file, doesn't it cease to be a YAML file anymore?
Yeah, it gets screwed over. Yeah. No, don't even go there. YAML. Now you started that.
We should rewrite this whole thing in YAML. Sorry.
That's it. I'm finding a new stream partner. Michael, do you take requests?
Okay, what was our type? What was the type that we were using? It was a resource search result. Yeah. Okay. And we'll just call this our. We'll call it a request because that's essentially what it is, right? Because we're requesting that this happens. So request resource ID and request resource ID here, and then our resource manager. Uh-oh, what doesn't like about this? Oh, we also need the subscription. That's right. Okay, so we need our subscription ID, request subscription ID. There we go. I don't hate YAML. I just don't like it. I don't like using it if I don't have to. Like it's one of those things where for the most part, it's fine, but then it gets really frustrating. I think that's, yeah, I think what you said, Christos. Yeah, it's that the IDEs don't really work super well with it, and it's just really, really, really frustrating. And yeah, bad copy and paste. I had that problem with the Azure AD portal for a while, where I would go to get one of the sampled JSON blobs for the manifest, and every time I would paste it in, it would blow up. And the reason was there was some hidden character that was in the paste that's coming off of the browser that was causing the manifest to go sideways, the Azure AD app manifest to go sideways, and well, that was it. That's all I had. Although, yeah, like that's the thing too, is like, what's the alternative? Do you really want to hand roll artisan JSON all day? Probably not. I mean, XML's nice because it's typed and has a schema.
Yes. There are pros and cons with these tools, right? But I think with YAML, it's almost a consensus across developers that it's not the best format. I'm surprised that this is the V2 of JSON, where we decided this should be the next gen of JSON. For me, it's just it's not as nice. Either XML or JSON works for me. But that's a personal opinion, right? Don't take it as a gospel.
Okay.
People, Tomo.
We're getting distracted.
Talking about base 64.
Okay.
MD5.
So we're getting distracted. I am getting distracted, but I'm probably because I'm kind of hungry. Okay, so we've got our resource group persistence function. It's going to go right to blobs. Yep. We get all the value of Azure blob bindings and all of the work too, apparently this time around, but that's okay. At least we don't have to handle using storage accounts directly and all that sort of stuff. So this, we're going to call this resource group persist. Queue name. We have a different queue for this. I mean, and I know that we argue a lot about different queues and whatever, or maybe not argue, but we discuss a lot. And I still think that, like, if you think of the resource group expiration scan, right, the thing we go and find all these resource groups that have expired, versus the export task, the blob write task, like all of those take longer, and they sort of would scale independently of each other, which is kind of why I feel like they need to be separate. Because then if we have multiple instances running and each one's doing heavy stuff like writing to blobs or calling Azure APIs or whatever, the other ones that are queuing that data up for that to happen can go ahead and queue, find what they need, get their work done, and then get out and get back to whatever their next task is, especially because of how this works. Okay, right. So now we've got our persist resource group function. And that's going to, in fact, I'll just call that to storage to keep them the same. So we've got our persistence. The other thing we need to do is notifications. We're going to hold on notifications until CLW can hang out with us. Yeah. So, okay. So at this point, this code will almost guaranteed not build, and almost certainly will not work. Let's see. Oh, I need a comma at the end here. Okay. And then, oops, we have so the timers, yeah, no, we can't get rid of those. We have a synchronous async function somewhere, which is this one, which, yeah, at this point, we're not doing anything yet. And then let's see here. Oh, our name change caused a few other little issues here. We've got to fix this. Resource management service. Okay. Hey, we might actually build now. Let's go see.
Dun, dun, dun. We haven't done any.
I haven't done any builds today.
Building whatsoever. Like since 8 a.m. we started writing code. We haven't run any debugging or whatever.
So it looks
3 warnings, which is fine.
So we have one's an await one, which is just a method we haven't written yet. We have the null reference return again, and then we have find upcoming is missing a trigger attribute. So we don't have a trigger yet for find upcoming or resource group expired. So we don't have any of the trigger bindings set up for that yet, but that's okay. It builds, so that's actually good news for us. So now that we're to this point, let's see what do we have done. So at this point, Should we move these into other files to make this easier to read?
Wait. Can we try to see if it runs first before we start moving stuff around? Like, at least that would be my approach. Let's test it, see if it works, if it does what it needs to do, and then start refactoring stuff.
Well, so the only thing it would do right now, I think, is just tag. So the tagging, the scanner tagging is what's wired up. The expiration scanning is wired up, but I don't believe. Let's go look at our functions. So we have minimize these. So find expired doesn't do anything. It just calls a scan. So it does a scan, but it doesn't actually do any work with them when it gets them.
Yep.
So find untagged at this point should find our untagged resources and tag them. And of course, our webhook, the work that we did earlier on our webhook, that should still be fine. So yeah, I don't know. Let's push it and see.
Push it.
Yeah, let's push it and see. Why not? And then I've got some GitHub actions that are going to go actually do the deployment for us. I don't want to be in there. I want to be in here. Push into main branch.
So we're not right-click deploying anymore. We are pushing to GitHub, and then we have GitHub actions that will push it to our environment.
So we got all this stuff here. A huge commit. Too much work.
Too much work.
Well, I did too much work in this commit. That's a huge commit. So we've also got some GitHub workflows. Some of those were written by my buddy Corey, who was super, super helpful in helping me get these all set up. And they run on a self-hosted GitHub Actions runner that uses managed service identity for actually pushing that out. So I'm going to go make sure those are turned on. Let's go over to GitHub and make sure all of our actions are still running. And I need to disable about 7 of these because we don't need them all.
Now, should we mention that we talked about this last Friday, but let's mention again that we have a way for us to run the GitHub actions inside a VM and using our own managed identity. So we secure the pipeline using managed identities, and then we run a custom agent, which JP wrote an extension. There will be a blog post coming, hopefully at some point this week, that explains how you can do it yourselves as well. That extension hopefully will get merged into the proper GitHub Actions options. We're waiting to see that. And JP is not muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. Apparently, I have a parent-teacher conference I'm supposed to be at in 2 minutes.
Oh.
So I need to get that. I need to finish and then go. Okay. So we've got a bunch of workflows here. Most of these workflows we can actually ignore because these 4 were specifically for testing the MSI. So I'm going to disable them because we don't need them. And we'll just enable the one that actually pushes this out. And because it'll be running as a managed identity in Azure, that means we will end up in a place where we only have access to a single subscription, which we do still have something extra in there. So the one that we want, let's turn this one off, disable all of these, and the only one we want on is to deploy Thazman to Azure.
Yep.
So let's enable this workflow. I just want this one. It looks like it ran even though it was disabled, so that's super cool, I guess.
No, I think it ran before you disabled it.
No, it's been disabled though. Okay, so let's look at our job. GitHub action. Okay.
Are you saying that the disable didn't work, in other words?
That's what it looks like. So we log in via the CLI. Okay.
Yeah.
Logging in with the service principal. We set up our .NET 3.1 environment, resolve dependencies, run Azure Functions action. Cool. And then clean up and complete. So yeah, it looks like we got deployed.
Now run super fast. Is this the one running inside your custom?
No, this one is running in a normal GitHub action.
Right.
Yep.
Not the managed identity one.
Yep.
Cool.
So
that ran really fast, by the way.
Yeah. That actually did run. That ran quite quickly. So cool. Okay, so that means our new function is out here. What this also means is that there will be a flurry of activity that happens here in a moment, where most of my Azure resources will likely get tagged. So let's go see if that happens. Now we're going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. We hope you've enjoyed the day. We will be back on this channel on Microsoft Developer on Friday of this week at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And we will be here every Monday and Friday for some unknown period of time until they fire both of us because we say something stupid, or until somebody else says, man, those guys are really annoying, we don't want to listen to them anymore. So thanks for joining us, thanks for hanging out with us. Tomorrow, don't forget, tomorrow we have on the 45 show on Twitch, we are hosting Mr. Kennedy, Michael Kennedy, to do Python with Azure AD and BTC. So it's going to be fun. We have him there for 3 hours, so we'll be doing a lot of exciting things. Make sure to join us at 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And thanks everyone for for coming to our TED Talk. Yeah, TED Talk with code. Yeah.
Who knows?
So let's see if our resources get tagged. I'm going to kind of hang out here for a minute.
Yeah.
We're going to hang out here for a minute and see if they get tagged. The 5-minute window should hit soon. So once that 5-minute window hits, we'll see if we end up with a bunch of newly tagged resources. In fact, while we're waiting on this, I am going to go open up. Let's see. Let's go open up the function. Oh wait, is that the old one or the new one? Where is the... Wait a minute. What the hell subscription is this? Is this even my subscription? What is this? The Thazman cometh. Here it is. This is the resource group I was looking for. So let's go in here.
Exactly.
Let's see if we're getting any executions on our timers. Let's see if all these functions were found for starters. See, it doesn't look like they were. Doesn't look like the doesn't look like the deployment happened.
Your app is currently read only. Yes.
Interesting.
But didn't find our resources.
So where did it get? So where did it get deployed? Or to where did it get deployed? Let's go look at our file here. Our workflow file. Because
we didn't see any failures, so I suspect that it got deployed somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so Thazman v2, log in via CLI. Yep, so we logged in via CLI.
Yep.
.NET 3.1, set that up. Cool. Let's see, downloading zlib, or no, .NET SDK. Cool, that all looks good. Resolve dependencies. We got some warnings, but that's fine. We still managed to build, so that's good. Yeah, we got the warnings about missing trigger attributes, which we kind of expected, so whatever, no big deal there. Run the Azure Functions action.
Deploy to AZ deploy RBAC
oh, there it is right there.
Publish to.
I used Thazman v2.scm.azurewebsites.net. Like, that's the one. So
go and do a refresh on the Thazman v2. It wasn't the Cometh, though, so you were looking at the Cometh rather than the... Yeah, so this one is the wrong one.
No, it's not.
There you go, V2.
Thazman v2.
Oh, is it not?
Let's look at our deployment history, which should be coming up here. Let's see. Let's see. 2020 1019. Is that today? That is today.
Yep.
Okay. Deployment success.
Well, it's March day 465, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so deployment was successful. It's cool. So let's go back to our resource group. I'll just see if there's any activity. Probably not. Okay, so here's Thazman v2.
Oh, wait a minute. There's memory working right now, so you're seeing a few spikes. Something is running.
That was at 148, which is right now, so that's good.
Yeah.
So why aren't those other functions being discovered, I wonder? Oh, there they are. Now they're...
Because you didn't refresh
here
this one. You went into the Cometh, and then you didn't refresh them.
That's this one. That's the one I'm in. The resource group is the Thazman Cometh.
Oh, the resource group, right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so that's cool. So they're running. So let's see if the scanner untagged has found anything or run. Let's look at our monitor here. I'm like super curious now. If we manage to write that much code and it actually works, I'll be impressed. Hasn't run yet, so let's see what the integration. This should have the timer. Yep, there it is. Timer. Yep. Cool. 05, so that's a 5-minute thing. When did we deploy this? I just want to go run it. I want to run it immediately. I want you to run now. I guess we could always run it locally, but whatever.
Those logs usually take ages to come through.
Yeah, I know they do. I can't stand that log waiting. Okay.
It would be nice. It would be nice to get logs straight away, but they come from App Insights, and there's this added delay.
Well, you get the file stream logs live, but you got to be there like when it's happening. You know. Do we have an Azure Web Jobs dashboard configuration? If we do, we could always go pull up the dashboard and go look at that. Let's see. Function configuration. Do we have an Azure Web Jobs? Ah, we do have a dashboard. So if we go back to SCM or Kudu, whatever you want to call it. Is it still called Kudu or have they renamed it again?
I think it's still Kudu.
Okay, so let's zoom out just a little bit. Web Jobs dashboard. Here you can see function executions too. At least you couldn't historically. I hope you still can. I haven't been out.
I don't think that's changed.
I haven't been out here to look in a long time. So as long as you've got the dashboard setting enabled, as long as you've got the dashboard setting enabled, you should be able to see function invocations, what came in, log files, whatever, because those are all stored in storage. So here's the functions button up here.
There are no jobs.
Okay, so those are invocation. It's almost like, yeah, like these like almost seem like the older ones.
Older ones, yeah.
Because it doesn't show the two new functions either. Maybe I need to manually restart the functions host, maybe?
Function. I hope not.
You think?
Let's go back and see if something ran or something happened.
All right, let's go see if something happened. We've run no functions have executed, so I'm guessing it's let's restart it, I guess. Maybe it'll pick up the new ones. I don't know why we have to do that, but whatever, such is life. Or my timer?
But will the timer start on restart?
It should.
So you have to wait for 5 minutes?
So the timer's enabled. Well, no, I think the cron thing is it whenever something's divisible by 5, so that would be 155, which would be the next one, right? In 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do code and test, obviously. Let's look at integration. I mean, it sees it. So
yeah, there's no way to invoke the trigger.
Yep. So, okay, so we've got our untagged function. Let's look at the monitor.
Why did you call it scanner untagged? It should be scan untagged, isn't it?
Well, because it was called the scanner, and it scanned us 3 times. We can fix naming.
Laters.
So this is the file system log. So this is, we should see this immediately. Like this should happen quickly.
Yeah. 2 more minutes.
And then let's see, in SCM we should also see once it reloads, we should also see all the functions. If it's been rescanned and all the functions are listed here, then that means we know that it rescanned and worked. Let's just shift reload this.
Nope.
No, it
Interesting.
didn't. Ah, it's weird. I wonder why. What did we break? Oh wait, now it's reloading. Hang on. No, it's still maybe it's because there are no invocations of them yet, and they only show up here when there's an invocation. That's my guess.
Could be. Haven't used this in a very long time.
Yeah, because the last ones were what, 10 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
We just did we just did a restart of the function app.
That's correct.
So let's see what happens at 155. Maybe we'll get some love. Maybe we won't. I don't know.
Dun, dun, dun. And then we can run it locally, obviously, to debug, right?
Yeah, we can always run it locally. In fact, I got some really interesting code here for managing tokens when it comes to running locally. You may have noticed this iToken provider here. This uses managed identity when it's available, but it falls back to CLI. So I got a CLI provider too that goes and uses my CLI when I want to run locally, which is pretty much exactly that. It goes and calls CLI with get access token.
Ooh. Time check from our moderators. Yes, we know. Yeah, we'll be there. 5 minutes.
They're telling us it's time to bounce.
they're putting us out.
Well, it's 1:55 and it's 1:55. I don't think our function is run yet, but that's okay. We will have more to look at on Friday, and hopefully by Friday it's run. There should be quite a few 5-minute periods between now and Friday. All right. We hope to see you tomorrow. Come hang out with Michael Kennedy, the Python guy. We're going to talk about Python and identity over on twitch.tv/425 show. And we will be back here on Microsoft Developer Friday morning at 8 a.m. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a few days.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you in a few days. And tomorrow. Bye.